All righty, Bowhunters, welcome back to another episode. Sitting here for the second time round with Mr. Liam Woods. Welcome back, Liam.
Thanks for having me, mate.
Bro, it's cool.
Good
I
to
feel
see you
like,
again.
yeah, Deff, I feel like we've really bonded after the last podcast. We got talking quite a lot. We message each other pretty regularly. I think every year someone has a really outstanding rut. Last year it was Brett Meldrum. This year I honestly think like the ticket goes to you with some of the outstanding animals that you got down. It's pretty incredible. And I think a lot of people, as well as myself, are pretty excited to hear about the little rut recap in general. So I thought we'd maybe start there. But we've actually talked quite a lot in detail about different podcasts that would be awesome to kind of drop. And as a second part to this podcast, whether we launch it as a second episode or as a one episode, we're not sure yet, depending on how long we talk for. But we're going to do a bit of a shot placement style podcast where really it'd be awesome if you guys jump to the YouTube channel when we get to that point, because it'll be very educational. I think I'll use a lot of it as snippet videos and stuff, but at the same time, I think it's just going to be great for shot placement in general. I think some people do get a little bit lost with that. So I'm excited for that part as well. But dude, tell us about the rut. How did it kind of play out? Tell us about your work schedule and how you had to kind of work around the rut as well.
Yeah, so I kind of went into this rut, like I had a pretty good rut last year and I was pretty happy with that. So I kind of just went into this rut, not really having any expectations, not really having an overwhelming desire to get a really big buck or really big stag or anything like that. I kind of just wanted to help our friend Hota, Jacob, who works at Bowhunting Only, because last year was his first rut and he got his first valley buck and he'd never hunted reds before, never even heard like a red stag raw in person before. So he had 3 days that he could come hunting with us. So yeah, we just dedicated those first 3 days to trying to get him a go and a bit of a taste of what it is like to hunt reds.
And were they going for him? Like, were they roaring and whatever else while you were there?
A little bit, yes.
Yeah.
But the rut in, at least in the area this year, was a bit different to most other years. Like most other years, you can kind of narrow it down to a 2-week period where the reds will be going pretty consistently. But this year was kind of more spread out over a longer time period, and some would go here, some would go there, and they were kind of like going in the 2 hours before sunup, and then they go quiet, and then you might be lucky and get a few roars in daylight. But the first bit, it was kind of hit and miss.
I've actually heard the same report, like across most people I talked to about reds. There was like a few people like started, like you said, you don't want to say it started late, but it started late. Like almost right at the very end of March was when everyone was like, okay, they've finally woken up. Like they're starting to talk now. But that was like, I'm talking like 26, 27, 28. Like that was when I got first reports, especially in the Brisbane Valley, of like, okay, now they're actually really on.
Yeah. Because we had, in that last week of March, we had in our sort of general area, we had 2 stags that were going consistently. And I put that down to they were holding a good number of hinds, and they may have had a hind that was already cycling. Whereas most of the other stags that we were getting eyes on, they were kind of still just wandering around by themselves, and we were seeing like lots of hinds and their yearlings and stuff still getting around by themselves.
Yeah.
So they hadn't been like rounded up or anything yet. And I would say for us, it was April 3rd or 4th where they were really firing through till, well, pretty much through till the 15th, which was the day that I ended up shooting my stag. He was roaring, and we got into a separate roaring stag that morning, so they're still going off pretty well then. So yeah, it was definitely a bit later this year. So yeah, to start my rut, I pretty much had the 31st through till the 6th of April. I'd taken 2 night shifts off in that 7-day period to give me that week. And Hota had the first 3 days that weekend, the first 3 days of that he had off to come with us. So yeah, just dedicated that to him, got him out. He heard his first roars like within a somewhat close proximity that first morning, and yeah, he was frothing it. He was like, "This is the coolest thing ever." So we tried to like make a play on that stag and sort of stalked up, got to within sort of 80 to 100 meters from where we could hear him. But the wind was atrocious for this entire rut for us pretty well. It was constantly swirling or just blowing an absolute gale.
I feel your pain.
We couldn't hear anything. So yeah, we kind of like made a stalk up, got ourselves into a bit of position, like on the same height as him on a bench, and he was sort of just around from us, and started giving some hind calls and stuff. And we knew that this stag mole man was up there the previous week, and we we're pretty certain that this stag was holding a few hinds. So we thought we'd be doing well to pull him away from him, but we gave it a go anyway. And he did come closer. He came just to that where we couldn't quite see him, but we could hear him, like he was right there. And then, yeah, the wind just slowly started to drift back towards him and just went dead quiet after that. So, yeah, that kind of sucked. And, yeah, we nearly got him a shot at a young fallow buck, chocky buck that was just cruising around, but he ended up coming in on the other side of some scrub downwind. So, yeah, the reds weren't really going off enough at that point. But I think it was that first morning after that encounter with that red, we sort of just went right up onto the tops, and I got it right up there, and this all like tall phalaris grass. It's kind of like patchy in areas. There was like a bit of a bench, and I was like, I'll just poke my nose over the other side because you can kind of see down a little bit along the ridge. And I sort of went over there, and there was I see this black pig in this long grass, and I was like, had my bow sort of over my shoulders on my backpack, just not really thinking anything. I thought, oh yeah, I'll just see what it is. And then he sort of turns, and like the sun was coming up sort of over the mountains at that point. So sun was directly at my back, but he had me skylined. Like he kind of just put his head up, turned, looked at me, and I could just see white like hanging out.
No.
I was like, I got like caught in this position, like hands on my bow, ready to lift it over my shoulders. And he was like one of those boars that, even though he didn't know what it was, he knew something wasn't right. And he's one of those ones, like, as soon as he knows that something isn't right, he's just getting out of there no matter what.
Definitely.
And kind of like he turned and trotted off directly away, just out of sight. And I've seen it in the past. Sometimes they'll do this and they'll get out of sight and then they'll settle back down. So I like quickly just got my bow off my shoulders and got an arrow, and I was like, I'll just quickly rush over. Like I looked back because I was like, would have loved to have got Hota on there. I looked back, and Hota and my old man, I was like, I cannot see him, and I was like, I cannot miss this opportunity. I know where this ball's going. So I just quickly rushed over there, and then he was like walking. He was like kind of like doing a loop down over the rise and then around the side. And I was like, oh, that's typical. So I was like trying to cut a diagonal across, and I had him at 20. I was drawn back, and he just wouldn't stop, and I was like chomping at him. I was like, and he kind of just heard a bit of something, and then on the walk just picked up a bit of a trot, and like when ducked around this log out of sight again. I was like, nah, he's gone this time.
Yeah.
But then again, I still had it in the back of my mind. I was like, oh, maybe there's a chance. So I quickly like rushed over again, and I was like, I'm going to try and keep on him until I see him like piss bolt out of there, and I've got no chance.
Yeah.
So come over the rise, and he was walking around these I speak these wallabies across the front of him, and they kind of like caused him to like stop. And he like just watched them, and then he must have smelled something on the ground because it was like real rocky. And then all of a sudden he turned and put his head down, started digging under this rock. So I quickly like got a bit of a range on him, and then every sort of time I take a few steps, I'd be like, yep, that's 1 meter closer, 1 meter closer.
Definitely.
While I was drawn back. And then he kind of like
so you'd already drawn back and you're walking towards him.
Yeah, I'm drawn back, like walking down. It's pretty steep and rocky. So I'm like drawn back, but kind of like looking where to put my feet, not make too much noise. And like I stepped on a rock, and as I took my foot off it, it kind of like just shifted and just made a bit of a noise. And he heard that. He put his head up, and like, you know, the boars, the real like good boars, they'll be directly ass on, but they'll turn their head just enough so they can like kind of see you, but you have no shot. So he did that, and I was just slowly, because once again, I still had the sun on my back, so I was just slowly trying to get an angle on him. And as soon as I cleared that hip, I just put it real low because I was shooting down. He was like on a downhill angle, so I put it sort of low, in the back of his ribs, and he dropped at the shot. I think it was about 26 meters.
Yeah, so he was reasonably aware still when you took your shot.
Yeah, he was still aware, and when I shot, and so went in low, but he like dropped and rolled as he went to run, and it came out like up near his ear, and the broad had actually put a hole in his ear. And when he turned, I saw that it came out like really high, and I was like, oh, bugger, like I'll probably miss the offside lung kind of thing. and he just barreled downhill maybe 40 and then lost his feet and just tumbled another 30, 40 meters. And
No way.
I'd obviously like cleaned up enough of the major vitals. Yeah, that's
This guy, right? Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, big. He's got some long too. Like they're not real hooky. They're just fucking big and chunky, right?
Yeah, they certainly stood out. And I didn't come across the ball like that good on our place
incredible
in a while. So just come across him. That was a pretty cool start to the rut.
I mean, while we're here, although we're talking about deer, in regards to the big boys, because they're really, it's one of those things for me. I didn't appreciate mountain boars until I went and hunted them at Randy's block last year. And now it's like, it's got me. Like I was in the rut climbing up, trying to find Frank the Tank. And then there was a rut and boar down below me, started going off, like doing the squeals and stuff. I'm like, I'm like, and there was a moment, I'm like, do I go for him rather than going for Frank? I'm like, I don't know. And actually, I was really torn. But in regards to something like that, like, do you have a way, like you guys have cameras out a fair bit. Do you have a way of tracking kind of how many big boars you have on the block, or is it they're just too elusive? It's too hard.
It's hard. Some you will catch some you can, if they will come to a dam and they'll be there regularly over the couple month period, they're hanging in that area.
Mm-hmm.
But there's lots of times where we see animals only 100 meters from that dam where I've got a camera, and that animal has not been on that camera once, but they're living there the entire time. So it's kind of, you get some, but you don't get them all.
Yeah,
so it's kind of hard. Like there's a ton of animals there that we would have never seen.
Mm-hmm.
It is good just to have the cameras out there, just see what is about and what you do catch. Like it's, I just use it as, I'm always excited to go check it because you never really know what you're going to get. Because like we walked past this dam and I checked the cameras literally 20 minutes before on this particular evening. And the next morning I was going on our hunt. We went back past and I was like, I'm just curious to see what come in last night or this morning before us.
Mm-hmm.
Quickly checked them. And a massive alpine dingo was on the camera from that evening, 15 minutes after we'd walked away from that area. And
no way. Okay. That's crazy, hey?
Yeah.
So you expect it to be a little bit later.
We rarely get dingoes or wild dogs in our area, but over the years you do get a pack or one or two sort of passing through. That was, obviously we don't want them in our area and stuff.
No, definitely.
Livestock and animals and that kind of thing, but it was pretty cool just to see that. And we would have 100%. Never have even known if I didn't have cameras out.
Yeah, it's actually a ridge at my block that I've not really explored much. It's a pretty new ridge that we've just kind of got access to. And so I haven't actually really hung out on it much apart from this rut. That was when I kind of followed Frank up a bit. And to be honest, now I'm like, okay, I want to get some cameras along this ridge because I'm not going to get the chance to actually really stalk it. But if I get some cameras up there and head out every once in a while and check it out, it'd be worthwhile. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry, back on to so how long did it take you to go and find Hota and your dad then?
Oh, they heard the shot. They heard
cool.
They were coming up. They were just fell behind a little bit, and I was ahead of them. And kind of, we weren't planning to go the way that I just thought I'd just split off, poke my nose over there, have a look, and then I would meet back up with them and run into this boar. So they'd heard. I think they said they saw me. They saw me like frantically, like ranging and like stalking, like over the skyline. So they knew I was onto something. And then they heard the shot. Hit him and then heard him barrel down the hill, and so they were like kind of there and come over and they're like calling out. They're like, "Oh, like, did you get him?" And I was like, "Yeah, is my arrow up there somewhere?" kind of thing. And they came down and got some photos and stuff. And after that, like the deer kind of went quiet. We kind of didn't really do much throughout the peak of the day. Just sort of hung out and stuff before the afternoon hunt, and then because the reds weren't really going hard, I kind of split off. My old man and Hota hunted together, and they went in a different direction. I was like, I'll go over to this different part of the place and try and like locate the red or something that we could target the next day. And it didn't really come across a whole lot. Like a couple of fallow bucks sparked up, but in that last like 10 minutes of light kind of thing, just enough to sort of know the general area that they were in. But didn't hear any reds over that side. So the next morning, her and my old man went back the same direction that we heard that red the first morning. And I sort of it off back over to where I went because I had a couple of cameras over there. I didn't quite get to them the day before. I was like, yeah, I want to go check these cameras. One of them's in a really good spot, and I reckon there'll be something on the camera.
Definitely.
So, yeah, I went over that way, and just after the sun came up, a fallow buck sort of sparked up. So I headed towards him and then run into some pigs, and there were two pretty good boars. The black one that I ended up shooting, but up above him in the middle of 80 roos, which is typical for a wise old boar, surrounded by roos and other animals so they can like alert him to danger so he can get a feed type thing. And yeah, he was like a real light, brindley grey, like with a couple faint spots on him. He was real cool looking boar, and he was the better boar. But I had all these other like the sows and this other black boar in the way, and I was like, oh, I won't be able to get around in the wind direction. So I like cut around, stalked in on this black boar, and I was watching him. I was like, yeah, he's got a good bit of hook on him. And then the moment I decided, I was like, yeah, I can't pass this up. So then at this point, like that fallow buck started up again, and he's only like 100 meters away, and I still can't see him. So I'm like, oh bugger it! I love shooting big boars. So drew back, and then at that moment, the wind actually sucked back, and he put his head up and like started to sniff, and I just like, sent the shot at, I think it was about 17 meters through the heart, and he sort of ran down, did a bit of a loop, and he was dead in like 6 seconds, like just feet out from under him type of thing. So the other sows, they kind of ran off, but only made it 50 meters and started feeding again down in the gully. So they went away from that brindle fella. I quickly cut up there, but there were so many roos. Like he was there, and I got to 40 was the closest I got from him, and he kind of just started to like, it was that time of morning that he just started to like move off.
Yeah.
And he was cutting up like through all these roos, and some of the roos were bedded, some of them weren't. I was kind of like pushing forward, so the roos would like, they'd see me, but I didn't want them all to go in a wave. Definitely. So I was kind of pushing a couple, then I'd walk forward a couple of meters, push a few more.
So that's usually how you deal with kangaroos. You'll always just kind of like try and maneuver a little bit by bit. Yeah.
Yeah. You kind of want them to move past and hop past just in their normal manner. Whereas if 10 or 15 of them go flying past in one go, everything that they go past, they're like, yep, we're out of here. Definitely. So those roos kind of slowed me down. Like that ball wasn't slowing down. He was just moving off up over the ridge. And when he got out of sight, I was like, bugger it. So I just sort of ran up. Roos went everywhere. Poked my nose over. I just caught his tail going down through the thickest, steepest like section of this place. So I was like, hopefully he's around on another day. So yeah, went back to the black boar that I shot and set him up. Got some cool photos and took his bottom jaw, and then made my way back to camp. And Hota and my old man like hadn't had any luck. The next morning was Hota's sort of last morning, which didn't really get onto anything, which was a bit disappointing.
Was that the other black boar?
No. Oh, I haven't actually posted it.
Yeah, I haven't. So it's gotcha.
I'll post it up here in a day or two. A few people have seen it. I put a very lengthy sort of hunt recap of all my videos and the shots and stuff on my Instagram story.
Yeah, definitely. It's cool to watch.
So yeah, and then we had to drop Hota off so he could come home. And yeah, the rest of that following 3.5 days that I had, we were getting on to reds. There was one in particular that was kind of like the best one that we kind of wanted to target. He was a big 4-4, so he's missing his seconds. So at his brows, his trays, and then like a fork, like a 5 normally would at the top. But it was like real wide. He had like a real nice sweep on him, and a bit of length. Like for a 4-4 like that, missing his seconds, like he had a lot of beam. So it looked pretty impressive.
Was he on his way up or on his way down? You reckon? Like he's over the 7 years sort of thing?
Young-ish. So he'll be big. Yeah, he'll be bigger next year. Like it was one of those things where if we got a good opportunity to make a really good shot on him, we were going to take it. Yeah. Because he's obviously genetically missing his seconds, which we have a lot in our area now. We reckon it stems from that real big stag Jack Crick got with the curve. Yeah, he was missing his seconds, and he was a dominant stag. Like Jack got him going backwards because we'd hunted him like, I know of 4 previous years that we were hunting him.
Yeah,
and he
wow.
was big all of those 4 years.
Yeah.
And yeah, so there's quite a few. I'd say we're heading towards probably 50% of the stags that we've seen recently are genetically like no seconds at all.
Yeah, wow. I'm
Um,
intrigued in regards to him being the dominant stag. Were you always finding him in roughly the same location when you'd go back each year, or do you change by a bit?
he had a pretty big home range,
Mm-hmm.
but we'd find him every year,
Yeah, okay.
kind of thing. And he was holding a lot of hinds all the time. He was so hard to get on to. Like all those years, we didn't know he was genetically missing his seconds, but he was unmistakable. Just he was so round, and his
Yeah,
long tops at the back that came to the point where they were only like a couple inches apart.
that's crazy.
Like it was,
They're
yeah, it was
cool. They're
definitely
cool
big.
looking, right? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, this big 4-4 was kind of our target, and he was roaring a fair bit. And there was one morning in particular where he was probably 400 meters, 300 to 400 meters away, like directly across on a bench from us, and we could see him, and he was chasing this hind like hell bent, like around in circles. They were flat out, and he was roaring. And we were like, oh, they were kind of like moving up because once again it was like mid morning,
mm-hmm.
and the thermals were at that point where they were starting to sort of change. There was enough sun out that they were starting to drift up, but every now and again they drift down. The wind was just not really good for a stalk in that position. So we were like, the stag was, he was pretty hell bent on this hind, and you won't draw a stag or a buck away from a hot hind.
No.
So our goal was to draw that hind to us, which a lot of cases the hinds and does will actually be more responsive to coming to calls.
Doing stag calls or fawn calls
So,
to get them in?
just hind calls.
Hind calls to the
or doe
hinds
calls. Yeah.
would get the hinds in.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And the same with does. Yeah.
That's actually a question I have. Do you guys hear many hind calls when you're out and about?
Yeah. Yeah. So I posted a video. I'll actually make it just a single post by itself. I ended up getting on my last morning of that week. I went for a hunt by myself, and I got onto a hind and a fawn that were at this dam, and this like yearling ended up turning this like dam and this like bit of grassy area into like its little racetrack. Like it was just playing around, and it was like sprinting down around the dam wall. You could hear it going through the water up onto the dam wall, and she was calling like non-stop, and like it was loud. So it was really cool that I got to video that and actually have that. And I had a few people, I posted on my story the other day, I had a lot of people actually reply to me and say like, well, my hind call is way off. I've never actually heard it before from an actual deer.
Yeah.
Like
it's pretty high pitched, right?
Way off. I need to get better at that. Yeah, it's kind of the hind. So the hind was feeding only about 50 meters away from its fawn, and it just didn't care about its fawn. It knew its fawn was doing the same thing. Yeah. And she was just sort of browsing on bushes and stuff. Eventually, this fawn kind of ran off and got over a fence and like over the other side. And this hind kind of got to the point where she was like, oh, like, where's my yearling gone? And she went up like looking for her, and she gave a few hind calls. Hers was slightly deeper tone, I guess, and not as loud.
Yeah.
But this fawn, she was like going hellbent. It was kind of like a
yeah, wow.
Kind of like that. That's probably not. I'll probably have to watch the video again to get the exact. But I'll definitely post it up so everyone can see that, and I'll tag you in it so you can probably share it as well. Just so
I will for sure.
Listen to that.
I heard for the first time fawn calls one over the rut, but I didn't hear any hind calls at all. We were out for the whole week. I mean, we didn't hang out much during the middle of the day because we're always doing some work for the farmers. But during the mornings, like you hear that stags going crazy, and then that was it. Like never heard any hinds.
Yeah. Yeah. So hind, I've heard over the years, I've heard hinds every now and again, but not as much as fallow does. Fallow does seem to be a bit more vocal.
Mm-hmm.
Like the good fallow buck ended up getting the drop on. He had a couple does held up, and in between his grunting, these does were just like like constant, but not as loud. Like fallow does are pretty quiet.
Yeah, and you reckon that is like chatter between them to say like we're going this way or something like that, or like do you know that?
Yeah, I'm not too sure.
Yeah,
I just know when they're sort of hanging around each other in a group and like the buck's going crazy, they kind of just talk to each other and do that like pretty regularly. So yes, that was all pretty cool. So yeah, this 4-4, we kind of set up, me and my old man, like we were like, oh, whichever direction he comes in, like either of us is whoever gets a shot,
Go for it. Yeah.
is going to take him type of thing. We are both sort of happy to put him on the ground if we could and get a ton of meat from him as well. So we gave my old man like gave some hind calls because he's a bit better at it than me. And next minute we're like looking across and through this like bit of a clearing through the trees, we just see this hind just tear straight down towards us, like down into the gully. And this stag, like he takes a little bit, but he starts like following. And then they held up down in the gully for a little while because we were like, oh, do we need to move? Like which way they're going to come up type of thing, because the wind was starting to sort of turn direction and we were like moving around a little bit. And then he'd give a roar every now and again, and every now and again we just give another call, and they ended up coming down around straight up below us, which we thought they would like loop around and keep a bit of height. They came straight down from below us, and she came up around, and there's this big tree with all this like eucalyptus like growth at the bottom of it, and it was just like a wall. And she came up directly behind that and came around, and she was at maybe 8-10 meters, if that. So I'm there, and I was already drawn back because I knew I wouldn't be able to draw back with her in sight. So as soon as I saw her coming, I was like, yeah, Stag's going to be behind her, which is always the case.
Chasing the scent, yeah.
So I was drawn back, and this hind comes up, and he stops. He was probably 20 meters behind her, and he's like roaring. And he's right there, and this one big tree is just in the way. And I was like,
isn't that the way? Always the way.
Out of all the things that could happen, like this is how it is. And she got to close enough proximity that the wind wasn't firm enough and wasn't great. She kind of sniffed around a little bit and then turned around and got out of there. And he kind of did the same. He just saw her take off and he followed her.
Following. Yeah.
And after that, like,
what a cool experience though, right? Like that's what I love about the raw and hunting in general. Just you get to see that stuff, you get to go and just be that close to the animals. It's such a sick time.
Yeah, it's bloody awesome. And like, you know, cool animals and like red deer, they're big. Like a lot of people don't realize how big a big red stag is in the body. Like they're 250 to 300 kilos, like a real big one. It's a big animal. It's like 3 times the size of a good fallow buck.
Dude, yeah, like we're going down to hunt fallow. I'm like, are these goats? Like they're so small in comparison to what I'm used to seeing all the time, right?
Yeah, so like a really big fallow buck, you're looking at around sort of 80, 90 kilos, I think.
Yeah, that's crazy. Big difference, right? Literally 3x.
Yeah, big difference. Red deer are like, they're big. So yeah, I can't remember whether it was that morning or the next day. We ended up stalking up this gully, and we saw a chalky buck up in front of us.
Yeah.
And there was a red. We thought we heard a roar, like right up at the end and sort of up a little bit. So like, oh, we'll head up that way. Like this is a pretty good gully in the past. Like
in this point, fallow. Like if it's a buck or a stag, which one are you going for? If you had the choice on both, is there a preference at that point in time or not really?
Yeah, so we're always targeting the reds.
Yeah,
like we'll walk past a grunt. Like in saying that, we normally try and like if we have to go past a buck that's grunting,
you want to see it at least.
Yeah, try and get eyes on it.
Yeah, definitely.
Because if it ends up being like an absolute monster, like we're going after it.
Definitely, yeah.
But we're normally targeting the roars and the red deer. So
yeah,
we got stalking out this gully, and I see this chalky buck up in front of us. And he's kind of, I think he was checking a scrape, and we caught him at the point where he's kind of like turning, and he was like heading back up the gully, and he was like, it was half decent, but I was kind of like, at that point in time, knowing that there was a red further up, I was kind of like, oh, I'll pass him up. Like, he's only going to be bigger next year type thing.
Definitely.
And we're walking up, and he like disappeared like so quick. We're like, he was only walking when I last saw him, and we got over there, and we're like, we expected to kind of be pushing him along type thing. And yeah, he was nowhere to be seen. So we're like, oh, well, don't know where he went. Kept going, and we heard like just 2 grunts out of the blue, like up to our right, like 150, 200 meters away. And we're like, oh, there's a buck all the way up there. So we're kind of just hanging around, like waiting to hear another roar on this stag to try and like get a better location on him. Next minute, I just hear something coming down from this, like through the scrub, and I'm like, and Dad's like over my shoulder, and he's like, yeah, buck, get narrow. So I like didn't have time to like put my like phone on my bow because I normally like recording my shots and stuff like that.
Definitely.
So I just had time to quickly get an arrow and draw back. And by that point, this buck is charging down this pad through thick scrub, like hell bent straight towards us. So as I just reached a full draw, he's like saw me at that last sort of step and just pulled up at like 12 meters through the scrub. And the whole time he was front on, and he had like a nice wide frame, and like all his points were good. His tray tines were kind of like out from his beams, real wide. And I couldn't really tell how like good he was. And I kind of whispered to him, "Oh man," I was like, "Do I shoot him?" And he's like, and then as soon as I heard, "Yep," and boom.
Fire out.
Let it go. Like, just couldn't pass up an opportunity like that. And
definitely.
Yeah, straight through the chest, and sort of angled down and out near his back leg. And he sort of ran 20, 30 meters, ran through the scrub, and went down. And yeah, he was really cool buck. Got a heap of really nice meat on him because that front on shot collected the jugular and heart, and he pretty well like bled himself out.
Yeah, bled it out for you. How good. So do you know what caused him to run down towards you guys? Like, do you think he kind of thought you were the buck or something? Or
no idea, because we're nearly certain he was one we heard 2 grunts from, and then after that, he must have something in him. He just turned and was like, "I'm headed down."
Yeah, wow, that's crazy.
We were kind of just in the right spot at the right time to have him come straight to us.
Yeah.
So that all played out pretty quick and unexpected. So yeah, got a ton of meat off him. And
can you talk through just real quickly, because you talked about the tines before on the fallow? What's the difference with them? Like, obviously they've got the paddles at the back, and there's something about the paddle that everyone looks for as well, right?
Yeah, the guards is a big, when you're like scoring and stuff. The guard tine, I'll probably use.
Yeah, go for it. Bring him over.
Fallow buck. I've got a head right here. So the fallow buck, they got their brow tines.
Yep.
Tray tines. They got
their. Did you say palm. That's tray straight away? Bow tray.
Yeah, tray. So
brow tray.
So the reds will have their second one here. So they'll have brow, bay, tray, or bears, trays. However some people say it. And then you got the palm, and the lowest tine at the back of the palm here. That's what's called their guard tine on fallow.
Okay. That's on the back at the bottom.
Like, that's a specific tine that you score, the same as these here. And then a lot of it goes into like the palm width, length, and the points on the back of the palm and that sort of stuff. But yeah,
so the points, they just all essentially like your tops from there. So it's just the one at the very bottom is the one that they count.
Yeah, that guard tine, and it's normally specifically longer than all the others, and it's sort of like wrapped around, and it's when they're fighting, their heads are right down like that. It actually acts as sort of a guard when their antlers are locked. So
yeah, okay. That's cool. And so this one that you shot on that day in particular, you said his guards were out to the side instead.
His trays were out, and he had for his age, he had pretty good guards. Like all his features were really good. He wasn't missing anything. He wasn't weak on any particular area. He was just like a real nice looking buck.
Yeah. That's incredible.
So that pretty much wrapped up my week. There wasn't a whole lot. Like, we get on raws every now and again, but it was real hard to lay eyes on stags or get onto them because they would roar, and then you wouldn't hear anything when you needed to hear it to locate them.
I actually that was something I changed a lot this year when I was out by myself bow hunting, is that when I was just walking in general, I tried to not necessarily have the bow on my back so much because I knew more opportunities would come up during the rut. Like, because they're so sporadic during the rut that I would make sure if I was in like country where I knew that were typically going to be stags, I had an arrow knocked and I was walking along like that just in case, because literally it's stunned me. It's got me. I've missed so many opportunities in the past because of not having that. So I'm like, this year I'm going to make sure I'm ready to rumble. Like, at any point in time, if something happens, it's not meant to happen or it doesn't happen normally, and then all of a sudden there's a stag in front of me, like I want to capitalize on that opportunity. So that was definitely something I did very different this year. It slows things down a little bit as well, because you've got obviously a knocked arrow, but it's also then you're not losing, you're not letting go of anything. That's for sure. Not letting it pass. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, you got to be like that. Like, especially in the rut when it's like that. When you're in an area that there are like it's a good area, there's going to be animals there. Like, you have to be ready. Like, all your senses are heightened. Like, it's a next level of bow hunting. Like, not saying pigs and goats and stuff like that are easy, but they're
it's a different game. It is.
Yeah, you can kind of you can locate them and plan a stalk type situation, whereas deer are unpredictable. They're making noise, they're chasing each other around, they're moving. Stags, like satellite stags or other stags, are moving from like calls to other calls, and they're just everywhere. So yeah,
Definitely.
you kind of got to be on your game a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. No, I think it was definitely I heard a lot of stories of people running into situations like what I had in the past, in the lead up, like, oh man, he was right there and I wasn't ready. I'm like, yeah, I've had that before. Like not making that mistake this year. And so what you had to leave after that pretty much.
Yeah, so yeah, one of
What date was that? You said that was the 7th. That was pretty much the Easter weekend then. You were moving
the
home.
6th. I was rostered on work day shift Easter weekend. So I come home that 6th, the evening of the 6th, and I was straight into work the following morning. So I had 3 days and then only a day and a half off work. Had some stuff to do around home, and then I had 2 night shifts, and I was like, and then I had like the weekly, and so I kind of get every second weekend I have off, and then I work the ones in between. So I was like, yep, I'll go back up there. Message my old man. He's like, yep, I'll come back down. We'll get in a final hunt type thing. This was so it was Friday the 14th, I believe. I finished night shift at 7:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Drove straight up there, got up there around about 9:30. We sort of did a bit of a morning hunt, got ourselves sort of up to a spot where my old man was going to go for a bit of a walk, check one of my cameras while I tried to get a little bit of sleep because I hadn't slept since 3:30 the previous day.
All right. You do that too often, right? The love of hunting just shines through.
Yeah. So yeah, I ended up getting like close to an hour nap, sort of around 1, 2 o'clock. Had a bit of a feed, and then kind of had a bit of an arvo hunt on the 14th, and so this fallow buck sparked up. We had a hunt on some boars and some pigs on the top of the ridge, and we saw them from the vehicle. So all we had was our bows. We hadn't planned to go on a massive big hunt. It was kind of like, yep, we'll go over to these pigs, check them out, go back to the car.
Typically for you at this stage, so 14th you're talking about, would you expect there to be deer still making calls and stuff usually?
Reds would normally, in past years, reds would normally go quiet after that. So that Easter long weekend is kind of like the last of it, and then they start to quiet down like around that 7th, 8th, like 6th, 7th, 8th of April type thing. But the fallow normally go for a bit longer. Like they normally start in that first week of April, and they'll go through to mid, sometimes if you're lucky, late April. So I kind of went up just not really expecting to hear any reds. I thought might hear a roar here and there, maybe, of a stag that had a hind that was in season.
Yeah.
But I really just want to go out there, try and like locate some fallow, try and find a fallow that we hadn't had on camera or laid eyes on, because I hadn't really seen or got any on camera that were like really good that I was wanting to chase type thing. So after following like some of these pigs and stuff, we basically ended up halfway down this steep side, and this fallow buck started up, and he was right down the bottom, and I was like, we're kind of already halfway down. We're already halfway there. I was trying to get eyes on him. So to get eyes on this thing, he was down in like thick country. So we got to vantage points, but just couldn't see anything, but we could hear him. We knew he was there. So I was like, oh, bugger it. We're going to run our light here in a little bit. We're already halfway down here. May as well make a go of it.
Yeah.
So got all the way down there. It was late enough. The wind was starting to suck down. So we'd sort of gone straight down from where we were, and he was sort of down to the right in front of us on a bit of a bench. He was directly at the bottom.
Yeah.
He must have like chased a doe down there or something, but he'd worked his way back up onto this bench where it was kind of his spot where he was hanging.
And he's just croaking non-stop, like he's just going? Or
he was going off. At one point, we thought there were 2 bucks right there because of how frequent his grunts were, and he must have been moving around a lot, because we honestly going down there, we thought there were 2 like in real close proximity, and we're thinking this situation, like they're gonna end up like clashing heads, like
definitely.
So we were like got down it quick, got down around below into the gully and started working up. And as we started working up, it sounded like he was kind of working up at the same point. So we kind of missed him at the bottom and he was sort of working his way back up. So I cut up this real steep bit of a gully and then just punched it straight up towards him, wind it like drifting down in our face, and came up under this, I don't know what type of tree it was, but yeah, it just had real nice, it was like an umbrella type thing. Just
awesome.
Real dark underneath it, heaps of foliage. So I sort of snuck up behind under that. And on this bench, it was just this long, like tussock type grass. And it was long. It was like shoulder height. Like this, you could barely see this buck's head. And there was like a little bit of gap in between like the clumps of it. And there was this briar bush that there were a couple of days feeding on the bench around to the side of us. But they were behind a bit of scrub and stuff. So we weren't too worried. Like we'd be able to get away with a little bit of movement. And he had this one little chocolate doe held up right under the edge of this briar bush. And he was just going mental, just croaking off his head. And he was like doing loops. And when we first come up to the tree, he was on our side.
Yeah.
In a pretty good, like I had a relatively clear shot. But as soon as like we sort of positioned ourselves and I was like ready, because I had to watch my limb clearance at the top. When I made a shot, my limb didn't whack a branch or something. So sort of got myself forward enough under that tree that I had clearance, and he ended up going around behind this bush, and he was behind this bush for like 15 minutes. And I was like, he was only around 17, 18 meters. So I was like, knowing like the wind's only drifting slowly, being in close proximity for a long period of time, like your scent disperses a little bit in a sense. So I knew like being this close for a long period of time was going to sort of limit my chance of them like not winning this kind of thing. So it was kind of frustrating because every now and again he'd come around, but I just could not see enough of his body, even outline or shape, to pick my spot and like know where to put that shot. So yeah, 15, 20 minutes passed and he was like croaking off his head. And this is when those does were just like, nip, 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 nip.
Yeah, wow.
So, and I drew back and let down, I think 4 times. And like I'm shooting a poundage is probably a bit too much. Like I'm planning to buy another bow here soon with a bit of less poundage. But yeah, because that doe, she was feeding front on behind a bit of grass, but she would have been able to pick out any major movement through that in the shadow. So every time I drew back, I was fine. But letting down, I had to try and like let down like really straight without making any movement. And I was like, yeah.
I mean, that even with the bow that you're, I mean, yeah, even with the bow where you're impounded, you're easy, like finding that easy, that's still a hard thing to do, to be like so steady.
Yeah, it's really hard to. Yeah.
That's actually something I've practiced a bit, like just in case. I'm like, you know what, this situation is going to come up at some point. I'm going to try practice this, and it's tough.
Yeah. Like, yeah, I can sit on my ass with my legs straight out in front of me and draw back my bow and let it down like multiple times with ease. But yeah, just being in this situation kind of under this tree and having to draw back and let down like in a straight manner slowly without making any movement. It wasn't nice on the shoulder, let's say that. So
lucky you go to the gym,
at this point, yeah. And it was starting to get later, like the light was dimming and a lot more than what you could see in the video as well. So I got to the point where I was like, as soon as I can make him out, I'm going to put a shot through this grass. Like I'm shooting a high poundage. I'm confident in my setup. Like it won't be enough to deflect my arrow significantly at such a close distance.
Yeah.
And there wasn't enough. Like there was a few like dead thistle type looking things in the way, but I just made sure that I had a clear window pretty much. And he came around. He was grunting sort of front on, and he was turning. He was just moving constantly. So I was like, had the pin on him, and he's there moving, grunting. He turns, and he gave me a quartering on shot, and I just put it sort of in the point of his shoulder, and it just skittled through him like somewhat low, but not too low. And yeah, limb knock on the arrow just like whipped straight through him, skipped off to who knows where. Ended up finding the arrow went a lot further than we thought it would.
Yeah,
and he kind of just ran like he bucked at the shot, which is always a good sign for deer.
Yeah,
and he kind of just trotted over on the bench and then turned and like looked back and then kind of just walked over out of sight. And the does like had no idea what was going on. They were still just right there, like looking around, like, oh, what's going on? And I was like, did I hit him too low? Like, just seeing him walk off as if nothing was wrong. I was like, what the hell happened?
Heartbreaking. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, at that point, I was sort of a bit stressed and kind of pushed the does off down the left and went over.
How? Just like you walked at them pretty much to get them to move off?
Yeah, that was pretty much straight away. As soon as he went out of sight, I was like, yep, I'm following up, watching where he's going. So I went straight over there. I can't remember whether they barked or not, but at this point, I kind of pushed them off quick enough that they just got out of there.
Yeah.
And I was stalking over, and my old man was like, went over to look where my arrow was, and he sort of had a bit of a different angle, and he'd like just pointed. He's like whistled at me, and he's down there, and he'd gone down. He'd walked down into the gully, and which was only really like 50, 60 meters from the shot, so he hadn't gone far, and he was trying to like walk up the other side, but he'd take a couple of steps and he'd be wobbling, he'd be like stepping back on himself, like he was in trouble. Like
definitely.
Yeah, and I could see at that point, so it went in from his shoulder and exited back behind the crease about 3 ribs back, which like if it was the reverse and a quartering away shot, like you're always aiming to hit the offside point of that shoulder. So it was a pretty well perfect shot. I was like, man, this thing's tough. So I had another arrow, quickly got a range on him. He sort of turned, gave me broadside shot, and I sent one at about 38 meters roughly, and just pickled him middle of the lungs. He ran up 20 meters and bowled over. And yeah, so that first shot, there was nothing wrong with it.
So was he dropping a lot of blood or anything at that point, like on the first arrow? Yeah. It was a good shot, and he was. Yeah, I just think. Do you reckon he would have died anyway?
Hormones, yeah.
Like
if I
give
him a little bit of time, he was bugging. Like it was a good shot. It was a hard shot, possibly a bit low, like an inch low, maybe an inch higher. He might have gone down quicker.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just put that second one in him because we were running out of light. Got him down, and he was real nice. Like when we first went up there, I think one of the videos you can see me, I like turned. I was like, he's a good one. And just heavy. Like he had a somewhat narrow frame. It's this one here. Like he's tipped in like a good. People always ask me like how I age deer and bucks. When their frame and their antlers starts tipping at the top,
it looks so sick when they do that.
That is a really good indication of age, because when they're younger, they'll start out like antlers go out and sort of straight up, like when they're like a stickhead or young, and then they'll start to get a little bit of that rounded shape. But they'll still finish straight up. And then over the years, they'll slowly sort of get rounded and tip in at the top. So when they're tipping in, and you can see that the tops are curling in, that's a really good indication of age. And I could see that, like, he's got, like, he's heavy, he's thick, like, even where he tips in at the top, they're almost like big blades.
Definitely.
The only thing he's lacking overall is he's fairly narrow and upright in his frame, but everything else, like, he's got real nice palms, guards, all his points.
Yeah.
So I think he'd be my second best fallow buck that I've ever shot. I've only shot one that's a bit better than him. So yeah, I was stoked, over the moon, couldn't believe it. My efforts of coming up after night shift and really
definitely just putting in the hard yards.
It's putting in the hard yards, like, really paid off. And yeah, that was an awesome hunt. The walkout was pretty brutal. After dark, not having backpacks, water, having to carry everything.
You were telling me a little bit about this, and you guys hadn't had a drink for like multiple hours on this point, right?
Yeah, because when we did decide to go down to this buck, we thought that we were nearly certain that there'd be water in the creek, and if we went down a bit further, I think there would have been. But just where I ended up getting up onto him up on this bench and stuff, we didn't really want to, after I shot him and it went dark and we got photos and stuff and
duck down
him up, we didn't really want to have to go down and then go back up.
Yeah. So the creeks near you, they're just good to drink out of, pretty much?
Yeah, most of the flowing water in the creeks is pretty fresh, or the spring fed and stuff. Like, it's real clear. Like, I drink it all the time. Don't really have to worry about anything. So just fill your bottle up or something. Just make sure there's not a ton of floaties or anything getting around in there.
I've got cow feces filled water. I don't touch my water.
Yeah, normally Hota was actually, I know Hota carries them a fair bit. Just like some aqua tabs or something. And I need to get some more. I think they are fairly essential for
Yeah,
people like
definitely.
us who get out in those situations, because you never know where a hunt's going to lead you, and you could end up being out for longer, go further, drink more water, require more water,
Definitely.
things like that. So yeah, if you're in an area and you have the situation, you have a bottle or camel pack on hand, and you come across water that isn't in a nice, clear flowing creek, I'd definitely recommend like having some aqua tabs or something like that,
Yeah,
so that you can get that. Because yeah, I can tell you, going without water on a pretty grueling hunt like that,
especially once you've got to do the hard work of actually carrying an animal out, like that's just next level,
yeah,
man. Yeah, nothing like a dry mouth and working hard. That sucks.
yeah. Yeah, so that was pretty cool hunt. I was like stoked with that. Like that just made my rut like that much better. Like it was such like a really good buck, the best buck I'd seen all rut, and
Yeah,
it just happened to be this buck that was going nuts this one afternoon. So yeah, that night we actually camped down the back of my ute, over the other side of our place, just mainly for the reason so that we could hear if there were any reds making noise at night. Would give us a bit of like an indication where to go for that morning hunt. So yeah, we camped out the back of my ute over the other side of our place, and all night all we'd heard was two bucks. One was one that my old man and then one of our mates, Michael, they rattled him in that previous week. It was a nice buck, but just once again sort of on the younger side, like he'll be big next year type thing.
Yeah, cool.
So we knew what he was, and there was another buck that we could actually see from the vehicle. He was sort of up on the bench above us, and he was a young choppy fella, like nice shape, just thin palms, like fairly long, but just thin palms.
Yeah.
And we could tell he was young. He was holding about 10 does actually.
Is that a sign of bad genetics, or is it just age? They just haven't developed yet.
Yeah, that's just age. So as they age, like if they've got everything, and like even if they're clefty, when they're younger, those clefts can actually fill out into full palms.
Yeah.
I've seen quite a few people like sort of post photos on social media and stuff, and one side's a little bit clefty, and they're like, "Oh, cull buck, like shot him because he's cull buck." And I look at that and I'm like, "Yeah, that's not the case." Like I've seen like found sheds or seen these, like sometimes they will hold that cleft genetically. Yeah. Sometimes they won't. So when they're young, it's really hard to call something as a
actually put a gauge on it. Yeah.
When they've got everything else, like if they've got a real weak side, or it's just a stick, like, or they're missing points or something like that, like 100%, that's a cull buck. Yeah. But if they got all their points and their palms thin, or they're a bit clefty on one side, that could just be because they're young, and in the following years they could fill that out and become really nice. Yeah.
And it's an interesting point that in general, they're incredible, right? And it's an interesting point, right? Because it's like for a brand new bow hunter into a space, I'm like, go for it. Go and get whatever deer you want, because really they're seen as a pest species, and you could be wiped out tomorrow if the government go and do what they want to do. But at the same time, it's like, hey, if you do want to see the herd grow, you can't always shoot the young ones and expect to get big ones in a few years' time, right? You do need to let some of them grow if you want to see the big ones.
Yeah, yep, that's it. Yeah, I'd definitely recommend that. Like if you're new to it, you haven't hunted deer, or like take anything you can get a chance at, because getting opportunities on like deer is not easy. Like sometimes you will get lucky and be in the right spot at the right time, and they'll come to you, or you call them in or rattle them in. That's probably the best situation. But yeah, it can be really hard at times, and the older they get, the harder they get to get onto them. So yeah, and that's another thing. Like the chopper shoots, there was a pretty major chopper shoot late February, early March that was in our area. It shot one of our neighbours' places, but it was enough to make an impact on the red deer herd. Mm-hmm. And there were two like monster stags that myself and a bloke that hunts that neighbouring place, he has cameras out, and we talk between ourselves a fair bit. And yeah, there were two really good stags that we chased in previous years, and they were even bigger again this year. Like we believe that this year was like their peak. Yeah. Really good stags, and that was kind of getting us excited. And then this chopper shoot went through, and like after that we heard about the numbers of the deer and stuff that they shot, and there was rumors getting around that they were like the two big red stags. Like we'd heard rumors from other people in the area that yeah, there were these two big stags, and we were like, yeah, that was the ones that we were after, and the
So
chopper got them, and yeah, and
so because with the chopper shoots, they have to get essentially they're meant to get permission from the owners to go and shoot in their block still, right?
yeah, so they have to. Yeah, there's a lot of sort of regulations and stuff from the government side that they have to abide by and stuff. But yeah, the property owners have to allow it to happen. And there were some properties that were in the area of this shoot that denied the chopper shoot. And I did hear sort of word from some of the places around us that did allow the chopper to come shoot their place. They're like, nah, like not happy with how it went down, not doing it again.
Seeing too many injured animals, or
that as well as just the waste of deer, especially red deer. Because fallow, from what I've heard, fallow are pretty good when they get a chopper over them. They kind of scatter like roaches, and they will put themselves up in thick scrub out of the way.
Yeah.
Whereas red deer, they're bigger. They'll herd out and mob up out in the open, and they can get them to like run straight up a fence line or a ridge, and they're just sitting ducks.
Yeah, far out.
So, and yeah, I don't know what it is. It seems like the fallow deer population grows quicker than a red deer population. So I don't know whether.
Yeah, I wonder if they have the same gestation or what the deal is there. Like,
I think their period of their pregnancy is the same time period, because the fallow does and red hinds, they do drop their fawns around that November period, from what I know.
Yeah.
But I just think that I'd have to ask Kevy Shilf, because he knows, he's the man for knowledge on red deers. As far as I know, he would probably have a pretty good idea. But
yeah, so 230 days for a fallow, and then you've got 236 for red deer, 290 for roe. That's not important to us, but yeah. So there you go. So pretty much bang on.
Yeah, so pretty much the same. The only thing that I could possibly put it down to is that when they do have a fawn, how many years that fawn or hind has to mature before they actually can have a baby of their own type thing. Like, I don't know whether it's longer for reds and that's why the fallow seem to breed quicker or not. It may not be, but it just seems like the red deer population never grows as quick as what the fallow do.
Yeah.
So the chopper having put a fair dent in the red population around ours was a bit disheartening. And that's why we kind of went into the rut with no high expectations type of thing for that. So yeah, that was a bit disappointing. But yeah, that morning that we camped, I only heard those two fallow bucks were like, right, yeah, we're going to go back up over the top of ridge and check over the other side. So we did that. We got up there and we're glassing, and there were fallow bucks going off down off in the distance, and straining our eyes trying to get a look at them from a distance. But there was this one metal buck that he was going nuts. He was like running off three other spikers or young stags, couldn't quite see at this distance. And he had a mob of up towards 20 chocolate doe just held up in this tight little corner of this little gully on this open, like on the shaded side of this ridge, just in this little pocket. And he was going absolutely nuts. So we were just watching him for a while. And then at one point, my old man's like, oh, did you hear that? And I was like, nah, what was it? And he goes, oh, I thought I heard like a roar, like over that direction. But if I did, it was like real distant. And I was like, oh, just grab your bow just in case we run anything. We'll go 100 meters over here and poke our nose over. So we did that. We went over there, and as soon as we got over this ridge, like only 150 below us, this stag's like roaring. And he was the one we could hear, but obviously, like, because he was tucked away, we could barely hear him from where we were because we weren't that far away.
Yep.
And
it's interesting how they can throw their voices, right?
Yeah, I think if you've got direct line of sight, like there's nothing between you and that stag across the other side of a valley or something, you will hear them like kilometers.
Yeah, okay.
Like you hear them a long way away.
I just actually looked up really quickly for when fallow start mating compared to the hinds. So the does compared to the hinds. So does got 16 months and hinds don't start for 24 months. So that's the difference, right?
Yeah, okay. So there's another year, I guess.
Much. Yeah, like
pretty well a
8
full
months.
season
in between
before they'll be able to. Yes, that would make a fair impact when you think about it and the number growth.
Definitely.
That's actually pretty cool to know. Yeah, I was curious on that. I didn't have a definite answer for that.
But you're bang on, right? You had it right as to why it's a big difference. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we got on this stag and threw my knockies up. I was like, yeah, he's pretty good. Once again, he was like missing his seconds. On one side, he had like a little nub where his second would be, but his other side was like a 4. He had his brow tray and a fork, and his other side he had a crown of 3. And he had like a bit of mass. He was like a nice, like big mature stag, holding does, and they're down below us. And it was just that timing that when we got eyes on them, they decided to like cut up this bit of a chute up this sort of tussock face, and there was a chute that ran up to like a dam, and they were coming up. And old man, like he had his bow, I didn't bring anything. I had my bino harness, and that's all I had on me. And I saw that they were coming up the chute, and I said to my old man, I was like, "Oh, get around those trees near the dam." And as he started to stalk off, this stag just like gets on this hind and is just running, chasing it, and they just shoot up. And I like full shout out to my man. I was like, "Run! Like you need to run to get there in time." So he just takes off around, sort of like crouched down, trying to loop around, and he kind of got to the furthest tree from the dam, and the hinds were already on the dam wall. And this stag, like, I was expecting this stag to come up, like, we thought they were going to the dam. But this stag goes up on the far side of the dam, up around, like, through tussie grass. And I'm just there watching. I couldn't see them because they're behind, like, the treetops for where I was. And I was watching through my binos. And next minute, I just see this arrow go, and then the deer's kind of run, and this stag walks around, and I go over, and I was like, "Oh, did you?" And the man's like, "Oh, how far do you reckon that was?" And I was like, "Oh, it looked pretty close from where I was," but it was one of those deceiving things where it was a long shot. It was like a last sort of ditch effort. It was a long shot. Ended up like just going under him.
Oh my god.
Yeah, but so they sort of ran off and stuff, and then only moments later, a full velvet, like he was in full hard, nice velvet, young 5'5", trots up out of the gully and just kind of like follows where they went. And I couldn't believe it because this time of year, really out of season. I posted on my story and
full velvet. That's insane.
Yeah, so I posted on my story and asked like if anyone knew the reasoning for this. Like I'd love to know. I had a couple of people say that it could be what they call a cactus buck. So that's when a stag or a buck has damage to their like testicles, or they like don't produce like their hormones. Yeah. But those kind of deer, they never shed their antlers. But what happens is they get really thick. And I know Brad Smith shot a Chittell stag, I think it was a couple of years back, and he was a cactus stag. And they get all these weird like abnormal bumps and growths and kind of look like tumors on their antlers and stuff. But this young stag, he was perfectly clean velvet and looked as though he was at enough of an age that he had normal antler cycles. It was just out of season. Like he was in velvet when he should have stripped in like late January, early February type thing. And it was 15th of April, and he's just perfectly, and he wasn't like rutting either. Like he had a thin neck, but was just trailing other deer, obviously, following all the other deer around. And I had a couple of people say that, I was right in the fact that he was just out of season. Like a hind must have cycled in like late winter and got mated with. So he was basically born 4 months later. And
wow.
He was kind of just out of that same yearly cycle. And they kind of said that as he ages year in year out, he'll kind of transition into coming back into the same season and timing as the others. But someone got back to me only the other day and said that they'd seen and heard of this happen in New Zealand. And apparently if, as a fawn, they become orphaned and doesn't have the mother to guide them on where and what to feed on, it kind of throws them out of whack. And it kind of like stunts their growth, I guess.
Yeah.
So that could be the other reason behind it. But it was really cool to see, really odd. Like it'll be cool to see whether he actually hangs around and I get him on any cameras or anything, and whether he's back next year and it's the same situation. So
that was interesting.
That was a bit out of the ordinary.
We actually had we had Ridgebacks growing up, and my dad was a vet, and he had these it was a great bloodline that he worked with, essentially like the owners of the veterinary surgery. had this great bloodline of dogs, and essentially they would have it every once in a while where a pup would get born and one of the testicles wouldn't drop, and it would create the same sort of hormone disruption to the dog, essentially. And so we end up having one of those dogs because we've got it castrated anyway. But essentially he was never going to grow to full height or like full size of what a good Ridgeback should be. So essentially they would dud dogs to these people, which is insane because they're just going for the bloodline and making him look incredible. We end up having this awesome Ridgeback for our life sort of thing, or for his life. But yeah, just crazy. And so I wonder if it's kind of a similar thing as well there, where like the testicles essentially don't drop. And so therefore the testosterone and whatever else they need to grow and do their thing just doesn't kick into play.
Yeah. It could be any or all of those reasons.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that was just, it took me out of like, I saw that and I was just like, wow, that is like really cool. Like if I had my bow, I would possibly try to make a move on him because I've always wanted like to shoot a deer in velvet. I've never shot a deer in velvet.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's definitely on my list of goals for the coming years and stuff. Try and get a velvet buck or stag. The stag's really hard to find in velvet, so a velvet red stag would just be incredible.
Definitely.
But yeah, after that, by the time all that sort of unfolded, it was really cool just to get on reds sort of that late and they're still roaring and stuff. So at this point, it was about 11:30 in the morning. So it was starting to warm up a bit. Not much doing, like all the fallow would start to quiet down that we were hearing earlier on. And I was like, oh, we'll just go back down, not far from where we camped that night. And I'll check like some of the cameras on my dam over there and see what's been getting around the past sort of week that I haven't been here.
Mm-hmm.
So I went down there and checked the camera, like checked one camera, and there was a few sort of pigs and all those tunnaroos and young bucks and young stags sort of wandered through and stuff. And I checked the cameras because it's a pretty big dam, so I've got one on either side of it.
Yeah.
And the one on the other side, I'm sitting there checking the camera, and I whistled out to my old man. I was like, "You would not believe what is on this camera." And he's like, "Oh, like, what is it?" They tell me, and comes over, and this big heavy stag is on this camera at 9:30 while we're up the top of the ridge on these other reds.
Yeah.
He was there. We didn't hear him all night, but he was just there. Photos of him right in front of my camera, following one hind. He's roaring in front of my camera at like 9:30 that morning, hung around at the dam for about 15, 20 minutes, and then left my camera. And I was like, oh, you're joking. Like, this stag didn't make a noise all night. And that's why we sort of like left and went off to a different area, like which would have heard him if he was here last night.
Yeah.
So yeah, I couldn't believe that one. And then as because we were hanging around there for a bit, and my vehicle's just parked on the damn wall, and we were kind of just trying to kill a bit of time throughout the middle of the day. And yeah, as I'm putting the SD card and changing the batteries in the camera, we were only like 100 meters from us, and I was like, yeah, stuff. Like, if that is not him, like,
yeah,
there's a very high chance that this is him.
It's going to be him, definitely.
He was here 3 hours ago. I was like, very high chance it could be him. So, yeah, quickly ducked back around to my ear, grabbed my bow, backpack, and
were you packing up to go home?
Well, I was heading home. We were heading home that night, but we were going to hang around and do an arvo hunt.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, kind of had everything in my ute, grabbed my bow and backpack, and so my old man. And the only really play that we had on him, because the dam was sort of at the bottom, and then there's a big, like behind the dam, there's this big like valley that goes a long way up, and then it kind of has all these chutes off to like one side, these little finger gullies, and all these like little ridges. And he was at the first one that has like a little bit of like a creek line that feeds into the top corner of this dam, where I had the camera, and he was sort of up there to the left, like up on a bench. So the way the wind was going, it was like we pretty much had to be on the complete above them on the other side to get the wind even somewhat right. So
yeah,
we were kind of like, when we were at the dam, every now and again it was sucking down this little bit of a gully. So like, oh, we'll just stay in the guts of the gully and hope that even if it is drifting up, it's going up the other side, which is normally where it does go when the sun's up, because it's like the middle of the day at this point. And he's giving a roar like every now and again, and we're like, oh, cool that he kind of sparked up in the middle of the day like this. And yeah, we start making our way up there, and the wind is like not ideal, but it's only going slow. So we're keeping a bit of pace, trying to keep essentially ahead of our scent, I guess. And get to a point where he's sort of up to our left, and the wind's like not ideal. And then straight up, sort of around from him, I look up and there's this young stag, like pretty young, like he was not very long, didn't really pay attention to how many points he had, but you could just tell he was a young stag, and he was standing right next to a hind. And they'd like seen us walking. They kind of saw me as I saw them, type of thing, probably 80 meters away. And the stag was roared, and he was around from them. So I knew that wasn't him. So I kind of, knowing the wind direction, I pushed them off to like get them out of there, because they were like away from the stag, and they just turned and ran straight sort of up through the scrub out of sight.
Yeah.
And I was like, my only chance here is to punch it straight up, wind's up my ass, just punch it straight up underneath him as fast as I can. Like, I know I'll be making a bit of noise, but in the rut, sometimes you can get away with a bit of breaking sticks, pushing through scrub type of thing, especially if you make some calls. They will just assume that's the other deer coming to them. So in certain situations, you can get away with a little bit of noise and movement and stuff like that. Definitely. So I get up there to his bench, and I can see fresh tracks. I can see that's exactly where he was, dead quiet, no stag. And I was like, nah, wind got to him, like blowing him out all over. So that was kind of frustrating, because the wind had been terrible for the reds like the entire time. And so we just sat down for like, we'll just sit down and like just listen, like have a rest before we head back down to the dam. And 15 minutes passed, I'd say, and then we hear a roar only 80 meters around from us.
No way.
At our height.
Yeah.
And I'm like, like he obviously hasn't winded us or like blown out. So I start just quickly get up, start stalking around through the scrub, and I get to a point where I thought I'd be able to see him and hear a roar, and he's directly below us, down where we come from, pretty much. So he'd sort of done a loop up around and then back down, and we kind of just circled around each other, kind of thing. And then he's down below us, and we could hear him. He was right there, but for some reason, reds just have, especially on our place in the country, they just have a way of like moving through scrub just in that section that they're out of sight.
Definitely. Yeah. There was one point.
Still at this point.
There was one point of this, right? Literally, we're looking over this face of a bowl, and I'm like, I'm sure they're here. They're here somewhere. And then we hear a roar, and we still cannot see them. We're literally above them, like 50 to 60 meters away from them. We hear this roar, and just looking in this valley, I'm like, I cannot see them for the life of me. And eventually he does another roar, but this time he's like, roar, and moves his head, and we catch his head. And it was like, he literally just blended in with the sticks and stuff. It was crazy. Yeah,
it's unreal how such a large body colored, like red animal can hide so much.
Baffles me all the time.
So at this point, we still hadn't even like got eyes on this stag, so we didn't know whether it was this big one or not. But it was sort of the same general area that we last left that we last knew, that big 4-4 that we were chasing the weeks prior. Was hanging, so we were kind of like, could be either of these two at this point. And so he was below us, so I start heading down towards him, and at this point we're finally above him. We've circled around each other, so the wind's pretty good. Like, I don't really have to worry about the wind too much at this point.
Definitely, yeah.
The only thing we were worried about is if he's going to follow that pad straight back down where we walked up, he would catch our scent where we walked, cross our scent line, like we would have brushed past grass, like bush, something, and that'll be the reason it'll do us in. And I start stalking down, and I hear another roar, and he's further down the gully, and I heard a third roar, and I'm like, that sounds like he's all the way back down at the dam where we started.
Yeah.
So get back up on the bench and cut around on this bench, so I'm above him, and start stalking straight down above the dam. And I can see the dam. I can see my ute parked on the other side of the dam. And stalking down through the scrub, and he roars, and he's like on this side of the dam, just above where my camera is, roaring, like just above the dam. And I just saw that he was like heavy as anything and old. And I was like, yep, this is the one that was on camera this morning. And I think I'd pushed out that young stag in his hind. So he was kind of looking for his hind.
Got you, yeah.
I get down through the scrub enough to get a clear shot, and I'm kind of at the point where I've got nothing left. It's just open, grassy ground between me and him. So I ranged him. He was at 62 meters, and I was like, I'm pretty confident. Like, I'm a good shot. I'm confident with my setup. Like, I know on a big animal, I could like pull off this shot.
Yeah.
So if he were to have stopped in a completely clear lane and I drew back and I was going to decide, like, once I draw back and came to full draw and had the pin on him, I would decide like whether I was rock solid on him or whether I felt like it was going to happen or not. But I drew back and he was just walking. And so I was like, oh, damn it. So I give a hind call. And my old man was up above me on that bench, and he continued further around and was kind of like doing a loop further around on me because we didn't think like this stag would backtrack.
Yeah.
So we thought he was going to like do a loop around and we'd be able to call him around. So I thought my old man was a better chance than me, like getting in the position where he was headed.
Yeah.
And he heard me hind call and must have assumed I was trying to call this stag up to me. So he was back behind me in perfect position, and he started hind calling and gave like a few roars and stuff. Yeah. And this stag was just oblivious. He was not paying attention. And he's only at like 60, 65 meters at this point, and he's not even paying attention. He's just like walking, giving a roar every now and again, and I'm just there. And I end up like letting down at this point because he's gone around a bit further, buying some scrub, and I let out some hind calls like as loud as I could, just trying to get this thing to like look at me and like just acknowledge that I'm there. And I think I did like 5, and like the first time, like he looked back behind himself and he wasn't looking in the right direction.
Was it like real windy or anything?
Nah.
That's so odd.
Nah. Yeah, I was like, what the hell? Like, this old bastard is just running his own race, just doing his own thing, and he's just not responding and just going where he wants. And I got one that it was loud as anything. He was half looking in my direction. I did it so loud, and he heard me, and he looked straight to where I was, and then turned his head back and continued walking on his path. And I was like, you are kidding me right now. And he went across, and I was like, God, he's going back up the way he comes. So at this point, I was like, the only play that I have to get a shot at this thing is to cut him off, and I need to get myself in a position in front of him and pretty much just stalk him at this point because he's not responding to calls. He's going where he wants to go. I have to get in front of him. So I turned around and like just leg it. Like I'm sprinting. As soon as he was out of sight, I like sprinted straight back up, dropped my pack because it was slowing me down too much. I'm out of breath at this point. Get back up onto that bench and run around to a pad that I took note of when I came around that cut down a sort of 45-degree angle down towards the gully, like down into the creek through this scrub. And it was kind of like a bit of a windy pad, but it was well used.
Yeah.
So I thought I was going to be able to use that to get down and head him off kind of thing. And I got to that, and I was about halfway down and looked down to my right, and I just see these antler tips, and then gives like a low bit of a moan. And I was like, too slow. Like I was as fast as I could be. Like I was struggling to breathe.
That's hard, bro.
I'd like pushed myself so hard to get in front of him, and he'd like beat me to this point. So I held up there, and I was kind of just quiet to begin with because I didn't really know where he was going. He seemed kind of held up, and it was thick as anything. Like I could only see bits of his antlers when he was like turning his head, making movement. Other than that, like I could not see his head, body, anything. He was probably only like 35, 40 meters away at this point. So I give a hind call or two because I thought hopefully I can draw him up this pad. So I gave 2 hind calls, and I could see his antlers turn. So I assumed he was like looking up towards me. And then he just like wasn't really doing anything. And then at one point I saw him, he like just started to walk away. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me. Like, what does it go with this thing? Like, he's obviously lost and looking for hinds. Like, why isn't he coming to my hind calls? And so I gave like another one really loud, and he turned and he looked, and then I lost sight of him. And then I was like kind of set myself up as if he was going to come up. So the pad was relatively narrow, and I knew I had to get myself, I didn't want to block the view. If he was to come up, the moment he'd poke his nose and head like around the corner of this pad, he would see just this object or thing just blocking the path, and he would just see that and turn around and bolt before I could even like get a shot at his vitals.
Yeah.
So I crouched right down and tuck myself into the side of the hill, like in these like dead thistles, and try to get myself sort of off the pad, just so I wasn't blocking that path.
Yeah.
And I was just quiet, and I was just sitting there like ready. And then I could hear him breathing, and it sounded like he was sniffing. Like he must have had his head down on his game trail, and he was like sniffing, because I heard like 2 big inhales, and then I heard him exhale, and I was like, oh shit, like this thing close as, like he's coming.
Wow.
So I could hear him. Now I could hear him like walking. I could just hear that he was coming. So I drew back in anticipation, and he ends up coming up around the corner of this thing, and I'm like holding my pin right on the edge of this bush, because being that close, like especially with deer, like you'll see their head, and they'll poke their head around. They can see you directly.
Exactly.
But you won't get a clear shot of their body before they just turn and they're out of there.
100%.
So wind was still like slowly drifting up at this point. Not that I'd really cared anymore, because we circled around each other so many times. I don't know how he would have had to cross our scent at some point, which was rather odd.
Yeah.
And he came around. I was at full draw, hold my pin right on the edge of that scrub. So the moment I was playing on the walk, basically get a shot into him before he even saw that I was there.
Yeah, wow.
So I'm holding, he comes around the bush, and he kind of like lowers his head, and his face is just completely covering his chest and everything. And I'm like, in my head, like watching the footage back, this all happened in like a second, but it felt like it was like
So
10
long.
seconds. I felt like he came around that bush walking in slow-mo, and his head was down, covered his chest. And I remember thinking, like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, he like glances up, and he looks, and he's in this position, and turns around and bolts before I can get a shot. I'm going to be like pissed. Like, I've busted myself to like plan this stalk and get myself in this position finally, and have him like come up towards me. So he comes around this bush, he lifts his head just enough to give me a clear shot, and I sent one down into his chest at like all of 6 meters.
No way. That's incredible.
Yeah, so we went down, center chest, and ended up that at exit, like he kind of was slightly quartering and like turned the moment that I like shot, he turned.
Yeah.
And it sort of exited like back behind his crease there, like in his ribs. And he just turned and just barreled through the thick of the scrub and all this crap and stuff. So I just instantly like got up, ran forward on the pad, quickly like snatched my arrow out of the dirt. And it was coated in blood. And I ran down on the pad, and like I couldn't hear anything. And I could just see like a bit of orange through the scrub, and he was standing down in the creek, and I could literally hear like the blood pouring out on the rocks or something. And I was like, oh yeah, like, yeah, that was a good shot. He's going down. Like I couldn't believe it. And I just seen like just walk across and just start walking straight uphill up the other side of this gully through the scrub.
That is heartbreaking.
I put the binos up, and there's just blood hosing out of him, like unbelievable. And I was like, you're joking. Like, how is this thing still like walking uphill? So at this point, I kind of like all the adrenaline, and I was already like still out of breath. My heart rate was up, and I was like, no, I have to like get onto him. I have to like watch where he goes after trailing. So I go straight away, start going down, and the blood is just like you get your garden hose, turn on full ball, and just walk across the ground with it. That is how much blood is like pouring out.
Intense, yeah.
So I could just see this painted red trail, like exactly where he walked, all up.
How long do you reckon this has been, like, that he's pouring out like that?
From the shot, probably under a minute still. Like, it hadn't been long. Like, all this happened pretty fast.
Definitely.
So, yeah, I go down. I've got, like, another arrow.
And are you being stealthy at this point, or you're like, I'm just hammering to get this guy?
Somewhat stealthy, because you don't want to be too loud that you really spook them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if there's a wounded animal or something, like, if they're feeling it, they'll slow down and you'll be able to catch up to them. But if they wind you, or normally in most situations, if they wind you or they see you and know that, yep, that's 100%, like that's danger, they'll get a second wind, and their adrenaline will kick in that like fight or flight response, and they'll go, just get that surge of energy and just go. And normally at that point, that's normally the time when you do end up like losing track of them and can't find them, that sort of thing. So I was pushing pretty fast, but I knew in my mind that he was losing so much blood that I'd got him.
Yeah.
But then I still had that sense of like, I want to
see
get
him walking up a hill like that.
I want to be ethical. I wanted him to go 100%. Down. Like, so yeah, I pushed myself, and to the point where I was nearly at the top, and it was pretty steep. to the point where I had to make myself stop and just breathe for 30 seconds because I was like nearly like about to pass out. Like I pushed myself, like I forgot even about breathing. Like I was just pushing myself up here so hard. And yeah, eventually get up there and he's bedded directly ass on, like on this bench up to the top. And I could see like his head was like starting to sway a little bit.
Got you. Yeah.
Like he was bleeding out a lot. But I'm always one, like if you get, whether it's needed or not,
you get the opportunity
it's
for a second
more
shot.
ethical.
Go for it. Definitely.
Yeah,
100%.
100%. Like if you get that chance, like it's better than you having a chance and you don't take it, thinking that first shot is 100% on the money, and then you lose track of them or can't find them. You'll be kicking yourself that you didn't take that second chance.
Yeah, definitely.
Like everyone always strives for that one shot, one kill down in a matter of seconds, doesn't go 30 meters.
That's like the picture book, right? What we all want it to happen.
Yeah.
It doesn't always happen.
Yeah, that's it. So, yeah, there's no shame in like taking a second opportunity, taking that second shot at all. So I'd recommend it for everyone out there. Like if you get that chance, take it. So I sort of had that in my mind. So I drew back, had to sort of get an angle on him to clear his hip. So I put a second shot through him over his hip, sort of back behind his, in his paunch there behind his ribs, and it exited out the front of his chest somewhere. He managed to get back up on his feet. And
what a take.
Yeah, I couldn't believe, like, this thing was tough. And yeah, he was sort of like trying to stay on his feet for a little bit, but yeah, ended up just passing out. The moment that he hit the ground, he was out. Like he'd lost all his blood. He was heart and lungs taken out. And yeah, at this point, I was just like, could not believe the situation and that this stag had shown up. Like we hadn't seen him on any cameras earlier in the rut. This was the first morning that we'd even seen anything of him. And the fact that he was still in that area, sparked up raw and middle of the day, I managed to like make a move on him and put myself in that situation and eventually kind of outsmart him, I guess.
Yeah.
And yeah, get him down and yeah, walking over to him, like just how old and heavy he was. He was all like had scars all over him. The bridge of his nose was actually dented, and I'm not sure whether that had affected his sense of smell.
Breathing,
possibly.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Just because, yeah.
Apparently he's hearing too.
Yeah. So his skull is actually behind me here. You can see in the nose, like the bone is actually dented. I think it wasn't this year. I think it was from the past.
Yeah, wow.
But he had heaps of, like, he had wound above his eye. You can feel like the bridge of his nose. He had a crack in the bridge of his nose. His neck, he had scars. Like he kind of looked like a rooster. Like if you look at rooster stags, they fight a lot. They got scars, missing hair. He was kind of like that. And when we ended up caping him, we found antler punctures. All his shoulders and skin was all bloodied and bruised from fighting. And even caping his face, like around his face, it was like all swollen and like had like pus nodules and like this thing was like an absolute warrior.
Proper battler, yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. And yeah, just how heavy. He was actually wider than he was long. And yeah, super heavy, super old. And we got this stag on camera last year, and the same thing happened. He kind of turned up late rut. And last year on the camera, we picked him as being old and going backwards already. And this year his seconds were slightly shorter. He had a bit more mass, but his tops this year were actually a bit better and a bit longer because he was a 5'6" last year on camera, and this year he was a 6'7". So
yeah, that's interesting. That's really interesting. So you reckon he was still getting older then? He's still not at his peak.
Still getting older. I believe if he'd lived, like going off his teeth, like his teeth were worn down quite a bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, he had a lot of age. His coronets, it was really hard to get the cape out from under his coronets, like whether you screwdriver up, just because his coronets were right down on his head. And yeah, that just made me up. Sorry, I got a few messages coming through.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just couldn't believe it. And my old man, like, he was like, bloody hell, like, I can't believe you managed to make that happen. Like,
definitely.
Yeah, he even said to me, he's like, I don't know whether I could have been able to like physically put myself in that position. Like,
I mean, for you to almost pass out is obviously putting yourself to an
Yeah,
extreme
like
extent, right?
I'd push myself like practically to my limit
Mm-hmm.
to get in on him and make my move like that. So yeah, and that just like topped off my rut. Like I couldn't believe it. Like going into it without any high expectations, wanting to get a mate on the reds more than myself, and then I ended up sort of late, what I would consider late rut.
Yeah.
Getting the drop on such an old stag, it was bloody awesome.
Dude, that's incredible. Yeah, I honestly, I was starting to think, where can I get an extra day in for this rut? Like, I just wanted to get back out.
Yeah.
It was not going to happen. But I heard a lot of stories in the same situation of people who went back out for their second little shootout like that, and then got it done the big red stag, especially.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, dude, that's so cool. That's an incredible story, dude. Like that was awesome. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time, while I'm standing. But I was like, yeah, that was sick to hear. What
Yeah, it's definitely one that, yeah, that's up there with like, that's a standout for me. Just the way the hunt went down, like the wind wasn't like in my favor. It wasn't the sort of unexpected, just happened out of the blue. Kind of just had to make the most of that moment and where I was at that time.
I think that in itself is such a good lesson, right? Like we're always going to fight against the winds. It's just what we have to do as bow hunters. So it's like make happen what you can and just see what happens of it, right? You're going to be no worse off for giving it a shot, at least.
Yeah, that's it. Especially like it's all like you're always learning from yourself and the decisions you make. And sometimes like you find yourself in situations where it's like, do I, don't I? And it's like, well, at the end of the day, like, what do you have to lose? Like, you either try and put yourself in a situation where you will get an opportunity, or you just back out. And in some instances, if you know that it's like a fallow buck on a stand of scrapes, you know he'll be back the next morning in that same spot. And it will be beneficial to back out and
definitely
come back when the winds are better or you've got a better stalk on him. But sometimes, like in the situation I was, when the wind was up my ass and he was up
got to make it work.
Last day, you just got to take a shot. Like the worst that can happen, you spook them, they see you, when you blow them out, you don't get them. But it's either that or nothing. So
yeah, exactly.
You got to take that chance. It's all
bow hunting's about taking opportunities, right? It really is.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Dude, yeah, that's incredible. Well, thank you for sharing, bro. I appreciate it. I know everyone else is going to appreciate it too. Let's really quickly let's drop your Instagram handle here. I know we're going to keep going, but just so everyone's got it, it's Liam_Bowhunter. But in case I split this into two, still undecided. But sorry, what were you were going to say something? I cut you off.
Oh yeah, I just like love sharing like my hunts. And one of the reasons why I do like posting up Instagram stories, and I was a bit like, I just didn't really have time to be posting on socials throughout that rut period and what came later. And I kind of put a reel together of the highlights and post that. And I had like, I don't even know how many, a lot of people messaging me like, oh dude, like where's your stories? You're known for your hunting stories. Like they're absolutely incredible. Like we love it. Like you've got to share that. So yeah, the other day I put in like a bit of time and post up. I think I maxed out the amount of Instagram stories you can post up.
Yeah.
And yeah, just put on like that hunt timeline that I just ran through there and all the videos and everything that I captured and stuff. And I really like when I'm watching other people's socials and Instagram stories when I like after work or when I can't be out hunting and other people are, like I love living that bow hunting through them, hearing their stories, seeing getting out, like seeing animals. So when I'm out, I really try and capture like the shots, like videoing the animals, explaining sort of how the hunt goes, how the stalk goes.
Definitely.
Either for educational purposes or just for the entertainment of others. So
I looked over, sorry to interrupt, but looked over how much content I put up over that rut period. And over that week, I put out over an hour and a half of stories. It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Like, holy shit. Like it just happened so quickly. And for me, it didn't feel like anything because you're just doing it bit by bit every day. But when I looked at it as a whole piece, I'm like, holy heck. And there was a few people that told me, like, I watched every single story you put up. I'm like, wow, that's intense. Like you hung out with me for an hour and a half.
Yeah. So yeah, I know how much I enjoy that when I can't be out hunting and seeing other people out hunting and seeing their success and stories and stuff. Like I find a lot of enjoyment out of that just because I love bow hunting so much and so passionate about it. So be able to do that and get like such a response about it and allowing to share that with people and them enjoy it and sort of have comments or feedback or things like that. No, it's really cool. So yeah, that's
man.
why I really enjoy it.
Yeah, this is kind of the first, like I've definitely almost guided people because I've gone to the block with them and guide them onto animals, but this is the first time I've taken a brand new hunter out. I actually was talking with Scotty the other day and he's like, that was the first animal I'd ever shot at, that stag that you missed with the rifle. I'm like, fucking hell, dude. Like you did so well to even take a shot, right? But then to actually get down behind, like we went and did all that extra hard work of making sure that he was shooting correctly, like really confident in his shot. And then when he got the hind down the last day, like it just made it, I love the whole experience anyway, but it just made it so much more rewarding when I heard it like that. I'm like, literally the first animal he ever shot was a red deer. Like that's insane to me. I'm just like,
yeah, absolutely.
I remember shooting rabbits with a 22 back in the day, and that kind of was something that I had on the back of me. But to come in, especially like he's 40 now, so to come in and shoot an animal at 40 and be able to go home and take that to your family, feed that to the family for months on end. He's like big into his smoking, so he did smoke up with the back straps, and they were just like all drooling over how good it was. I'm like, you guys are in for a treat with what you've got to come. Like, yeah, it's a very rewarding feeling after the fact. And I think like obviously I was in the right and I'm like, oh, I want to get my part done, but at the same time I was so stoked to be able to give that as an experience. And he's like, so can I come down for the next rut? I'm like, dude, why bother waiting that long? Like get down sooner. Let's go hunting again.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But yeah, I understand. And it's funny because you hear it all the time, right? People are like, oh, I get just as much joy out of getting someone else onto something. And I'm starting to get into that side of it now. I'm like, oh wow, that is really cool.
Yeah, no, it's really cool to share those experiences with other people. And I'm like to the point now where like I've done a fair bit of solo hunting and like I still do it because I love it and I love getting out there, but I definitely do prefer those situations when either like my missus is tagging along with me or just having somebody else there to share that experience with. It just makes it a whole lot more sort of meaningful and enjoyable. And like when I go out and do it by myself, like in that moment, like you get that adrenaline rush, you get that overwhelming like emotions and stuff like that. But after that, like I'm always like cannot wait to get back and like share a story like with my missus, with my old man, with my hunting mates. And like when they're out hunting, like always flicking them a message like, how'd you go this morning? Like, got anything yet? Like,
yeah, definitely. So, actually, a lot of kids, for instance, I've got 2 daughters, and they'll often be like, "Hey, Dad, can you tell us a story?" I always tell them my hunting story. So I'm like, "All right, this is a story about Maddie, a bow hunter."
Yeah, that's 100%. That's going to be me. Yep.
Yeah, it's so good. Well, as a next part to this, what we actually want to do, I've put together a little document with a whole heap of different animals standing in different locations. I just need to actually find it. It's on this one here. And what we've got is a little X that we're going to do to mark the spot. So you got proper view of this, don't you, Liam? You can see.
Yes, I can see your screen. Yep.
Cool. We're going to do nice and small X because really that's how big an arrow shot's going to be. Something nice and small like that. So first one we've got is a few different goats. I'm going to Command C and V that a few times. There we go. So we've got a few different ones that we're working on. So we've got 4 different goats taking a drink of water. Let's work on this white little one here. So if you think about your bone positioning, comes up, across, and then ducks back, essentially is the way that front leg is going to work. Can you see my arrow?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, cool. And so as a shot for this guy in particular, you think about he's covering his vitals pretty darn well in that position.
Yeah.
Right?
So for majority of hunters, especially if you're new to it.
Actually, let's put a pause. Yeah, this is a good point. So as a precursor, we're going to talk about shots. We're not necessarily saying these are the best shots to always take. We're saying this would be a kill shot potentially in this situation, but really you're always best, especially as a starting bow hunter, to wait for your broadside shot. Like that's going to be the ideal position. We've got a few of those that we're going to talk about as we go through this. But I think realistically, like this is like, okay, yes, this would be a shot that potentially would work. And as you get more direct with your shooting, then yes, this would be a great shot for you to potentially take. We're not going to say, like, I'm going to say, let's put a shot on every single animal, even though some of these photos are probably shots that we wouldn't actually take in the wild. I think that's really good to preference. And also I'm going to say that none of these photos are mine. I've just got them straight from Google. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So all these shots and stuff. I'll kind of explain like
Definitely.
relative on your experience, your confidence, and your setup. What pens you're shooting,
Definitely.
what broadheads you're using. That will really dictate a lot on sort of penetration and change the outcome of situations where you could potentially hit bone or you do hit bone. So most shots, like the rib cage, pretty well covers around the majority of houses the chest cavity. So all shots you will definitely have, even a clean broadside shot, you pretty well have a really high chance of hitting rib.
Bone. Yeah,
but rib bones, they are thinner. Most relatively heavy pounds with a decent solid broadhead will crack, break, cut through, and make it through that rib cage. The main bone structure you do need to worry about is the scapula. And that bone structure that Matty kind of just outlined, whereas the front leg comes up to the elbow, and then they have that bone that comes forward to the point of their shoulder, and then that connects to the scapula, which runs back sort of as a triangle up across them there. So
like this. So this is actually the outline of your deer right here.
Yes.
So yeah, literally you've got it that sits forward and then punches back. And you kind of got that is the shoulder in general. But yeah, if you look at how far back the scap sits, what's that? There's like really 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth rib back, and you're still covering it with the scap.
Yeah. So
that fifth and sixth rib.
I do believe that is a fairly accurate diagram there, but yes, that scapula on different size animals will be slightly different. And if you think about like the size of a fox, they sort of have a long, skinnier body compared to, say, a red deer or something like we're looking at here. I do believe that scapula would be slightly bigger and come back slightly more.
Going to say, yeah, and probably wouldn't sit up as high, right?
Wouldn't sit
down
up.
here.
It would sit down a bit lower.
Yeah.
And the point of his elbow would kind of be back at that back of that shaded line. Down the bottom there, but it's still a pretty good representation, and you can kind of
the bones at least, definitely. So
yeah, the structure of the bones, and that kind of you can. A lot of people like Brad Smith and all that, we always talk about the magic triangle, which basically is a triangle where the long side is sort of basically runs up the back of the leg, sort of on the crease, straight up to the top of the spine there, and then the 2 points of the triangle angle forward. As you can see there.
So really,
this would be a really triangle,
but it's kind of
we'll be able to make it work.
Essentially like that.
If you turn that around,
be kind of in like that. We'll turn it again, more like that. There you go.
Yep. And then it'll come back a little bit further. But yeah, that's essentially the magic triangle. Like a lot of people, when they're new to it and they don't know the structure of animals and stuff, they get worried about hitting them in that area there, because the shoulder, like, it looks dense, but it's all muscle. So I was
going to say, yeah, when you look at that side on as an animal, let's look at this little guy. Like, really, you're talking about.
You would assume that's all bone.
But yeah, you look at that and you're like, yeah, that's all bone, right? But really, you're trying to put your shot in this sort of position. Like, you're actually, if you see where the elbow is, that triangle starts all the way in here, positions out to there, comes down to that elbow. It's kind of like that, right?
Yeah.
As a position.
Yeah, so that's what most of us talk about as magic triangle. But I remember years ago when I was hunting with Brad Smith, when we actually cut open a borderite shot, and he explained it more as like a teardrop shape, because the lungs sort of come up and back a lot further, and then you don't want to go too far back off that crease, because you'll be getting behind the heart and sort of in the liver, kidney sort of area just in front of the gut. So
a bit more kind of like that, but not as big.
Yep. So if you flip that around the other way.
Oh, you want it to be
Yep, a 180 on that. So the tip of the teardrop comes back. Yep, that's it.
Okay, yep.
It's more, it's kind of like a teardrop, so the base of that teardrop will encompass that magic triangle area.
Definitely.
And the lungs in the animals, they'll come up and back at an angle. So if you were to hit an animal halfway down the body, you would want it to be in the top half of that animal to hit the lungs up high, because below that,
so kind of like your seventh, anything within that seventh rib You want to be
Yeah,
like
pretty
in
well.
there. Yeah.
Yep. So that's pretty much on a broadside shot. That is the heart and lungs and the vitals where you
Golden
want to be
ticket. Yeah.
getting that shot into, which ultimately you're always aiming for that heart shot. There's a section where the lobes of the lung actually, because they sort of sit over each side of the heart, and the heart's in the center. They're like kind of like umbrellas over the heart, and there's an area where the lobes of the lungs kind of sit down over overlap the top of the heart, where all the major arteries in the aorta and all that come out of the top of the heart.
Yeah.
And it's what myself and a few of us refer to as a heart lung shot, which is the ultimate top of the heart.
You're going to kill
hitting
them.
the lungs as well, and you're basically putting that animal down in the two most effective ways, which is through major blood loss and also collapsing the lungs, causing lack of oxygen to the brain. And essentially both those reasons, the animal will essentially like black out, pass out, go to sleep type thing. So then essentially not suffering as much as, say, a rifle shot where it's blunt force trauma, you're hitting spine or neck and you're putting them down. Like if that doesn't snap the brain stem or isn't a brain shot, they're not out instantly. They're essentially sort of paralyzed to begin with. But there's enough blunt force trauma of that bullet causing sort of mass internal hemorrhaging and causing them to die as well. So
yeah. And so in regards to the lungs, like not looking at both lungs here, but just at the one, that's kind of more so how your lung would sit, right? It doesn't sit, as some people might think, like a straight beam like that.
Yeah,
they're more of an angled like position. And as you said, so say the blue was the heart, you've got one flap kind of covering over that heart.
Yep. Yes, essentially. So yeah, you want to be top of the heart.
Same, but different. Yeah.
Yeah, hitting those major arteries leading out of the heart. And if you actually have a look at a heart, the bottom half of the heart is basically the bulk and the muscle that actually contracts in the beating of that. So a low heart shot, you still will get a lot of blood and good blood trail, and it will still kill that animal very, very effectively and quick. Might have to put in realistic heart into that.
Oh, my God, I thought I just lost that whole document. I was like, no.
But yeah, so the heart has hollow chambers where the deoxygenated blood sort of goes in and then heads out to the lungs to basically be reoxygenated, and then it goes from the lungs back into the heart and then gets pumped out into the body with that fresh blood. So if you're in that top half of that blood, you're hitting those major arteries and opening them up, so you'll get major blood loss from that. If you're a low heart through the meat, you will, or nick the back of the heart, you will still put them down. It's still like a heart shot. It's a great shot, but it will take a little bit longer. They might go a little bit further because it's through more of the muscle rather than taking off the top of the heart there.
Yeah. Bring forward. There you go. So kind of something like that.
Yeah, pretty
almost,
well.
But yeah. That will do for demonstration purposes, right?
A really good idea.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So scrolling back up, then we'll start back at the top. Like I said, we've got a lot of different critters to kind of work with. So if you have a look, then realistically, your lungs are kind of going to be just sitting over the crest here. Your heart's going to be pretty much in this sort of position,
right behind the bone,
behind the bone, right in here, essentially.
So that right there, would be with the quartering on angle. That would be a heart. That would be in the top half of the heart. That's the top of the heart shot. But that is, you got a bone running directly across that. So most people, you want to avoid those major bone structures. So if I were to take a shot on that animal, it would be up slightly and then back just above the bone.
Like up about there-ish.
Yeah, just behind the, so you're missing that scapula, you're above that front bone, above the elbow, and you basically, your only option here is the double lung shot.
Definitely.
And when you're taking lung shots, you do want to hit both lungs, like quartering shots, quartering on, quartering away. You got to make sure that you have the angle right so that you're not missing a lung, because animals are tough. Even humans can actually live and function off one completely healthy functioning lung. So you only hit that animal in one lung, yes, that lung will collapse and not be working, but they will. It's like I in the past have hit a boar super tight coring away shot, didn't hit him far enough back to have the exit hit the offside lung. So I only got that onside lung sort of down the side of him. And 3 months later, we found that same boar again. He'd lost a lot of condition. He went from being like a 100-kilo boar down to a 70-kilo boar.
Wow.
And I ended up getting the drop on him, and we cut him open, and his shoulder and stuff was just a mass of scar tissue, and he'd healed and was living, feeding, completely fine. And yeah, so animals can 100% live off one lung. The only issue they kind of run into with that is if all that blood damage and the vessels that you do hit cause like a blood clot or something, and you end up essentially dying from a stroke or a heart attack or something like that, which is very rare. So yeah, if you only hit one lung, 9 times out of 10, that animal probably will live. But yeah, you'll be doing well to find them.
Definitely. So given that these ones, in regards to this actual positioning, you have a look at where we've got these few different nannies. This nanny's horn is pretty much right in a position where we'd actually want to be taking a shot on this guy. And then this nanny's horn is actually kind of blocking the view as to where we would take a shot on that one.
Yep.
So realistically, in this situation of these shots, this nanny here would actually be the best one. If you were going just for meat shot, that would probably be the shot you'd actually want to take on any of these animals, right?
Yeah, I'd probably go the one that's slightly more quartering on. Like that 45-degree quartering on is really bad shot for bone structure. Like I wouldn't recommend anyone taking that shot. You're better off having them quartering more towards you so you can get in front of that point of the shoulder. And down through their body, essentially like through the front of their chest.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, that would be, out of all those, that would be the shot that I would take on those.
That you'd pretty much just be trying to get above that nanny's horn as much as you could.
Yeah, pretty well. Just sort of, through the neck, kind of shooting down on them because the head's down drinking, and it would exit sort of back behind the crease on the opposite side.
You'd go lower on that? Is that what you're saying?
No, that's pretty good height, if not slightly high, because it will exit lower. It'll enter higher on that animal's neck, and when that animal stands up, it will enter. It will exit, down out behind his elbow on the opposite side there. Yep.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. We're going to keep it moving. So this is a good shot in regards to a Billy. He's got his front leg forward. Great position in regards to like a broadside shot, essentially. Say he was paused in that position rather than walking. So just for the people that aren't watching and are only listening, when an animal has one leg forward, the other opposite leg will generally be back, and that will create a V between their legs. So that V, you kind of want to go up straight from the point of that V in between their legs. And then if you're looking
for height wise, you want to be
lower.
As a rule of thumb, a third the way out. So if you split the width of that body or the height of that body into thirds, you want to be at that lower third.
So in regards to his elbow, would you say that's his elbow joint? Like that's essentially bone where I've got my marker?
Yeah, you can kind of see on his hairline there. Yep. It's down underneath the cursor there. Yep. So you want to be just above that. But yeah, so for the ease of it, for most people, you want to cut their body in half and then go below, just a couple inches below that half.
So realistically, anywhere from about here to here, you're looking at a pretty good shot.
Yep. And that's like perfect line for that heart lung, like we're talking there. Yep.
Awesome. So we've got 3. You got a nanny, a little young one, and then we've got the old Billy in the back. And really, the young one the kid is right in front of where you'd want to take your shot for the Billy.
I would not. I wouldn't take a shot there. The only really shot is back of the lungs, but that's a risky shot. Like I'd pass on that. Wait for a clear shot.
And so, in regards to this nanny here, a shot on her, would you say that she is quartering away enough?
Quartering on?
Sorry, quartering on enough. Like that's a good angle, or you want her to be transitioned a little bit more? towards you.
Yeah, the fact that her head's turned around and her body sort of goes back, like I know I've seen it a lot. Americans, nothing against Americans or any Americans listening. I have seen people shooting elk and they would have a shot angle like that and they would choose to hit it behind the shoulder, back down the body.
Yeah, I've seen that before.
And go for a lung shot, but you'd be hitting the back of the onside lung and you'd be going through gut, and
definitely
not a good shot. When they are quartering on at that point, you want to be in front of pretty much on the point of the shoulder or slightly in front of it.
Yeah, so like
down through the chest.
So towards that side of the front shoulder. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. We've got a new. Oh, whoops. Let's see. I think I just stuffed that. Let me grab this guy again. Got a new photo with plenty of goats. This one's. You've got this Billy up the top. Let's have a talk about him.
Yep.
So you've got Billy off to the side. He's kind of slightly quartering.
Yep.
Yeah. But you've got a full view of his shoulder.
Yep. So even when they're slightly quartering on, I tend not to take those shots because you are getting back behind the heart.
Yeah.
Because that bone structure is completely covering the heart at that angle. And it's not enough for you to get in front of the point of that shoulder to get down into his chest and heart that way. So
that would be a no shot.
I wouldn't take that shot. The only shot you really have is sort of back of the lungs.
Yeah. And then so this chick, she's actually same sort of position almost, right? Like you see where her front leg is, it's there.
Yeah, so her front leg's in front, but you can see her body going off her back legs. Mm-hmm. Her body is it's pretty well side on, and she's just got a head and front turn. So I'd just treat that as a perfect broadside shot. And I'd go straight up from that. Whoops. Yep.
Just made it bigger rather than getting hard to drag it around.
So that shot there, you pretty much want to run up straight up from the middle of that front leg. Mm-hmm. And once again, about that third the way up the body.
So I'd pull it in a little bit tighter than what you think, even.
Yeah, I'd probably go down slightly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to be below that halfway. Just in case, like, you kind of aim for deer, I'd probably say aim even like a quarter. If you halve that body and then halve the bottom half again, find the height you want, because that kind of accounts for that animal dropping at any point. Or if you're out slightly and your arrow hits a couple inches higher than you expected, you're collecting those lungs.
Definitely, yeah. All right. This one with lots of goats. Let's zoom in more for these ones. So, in regards to shots, you would say that's a non-shot, but that would almost be a shootable.
Because his legs forward, he's moving that scapula and that bone structure forward and opening up that triangle essentially where behind his pocket there. So that cursor right where you've got it would be my shot. That's where I'd put my mark. That's where his heart would be sitting. In that situation with lots of goats, I wouldn't take a shot because I know that I'll get a pass through and my arrow would probably clean up. Who knows how many goats behind it.
100%, yeah. Here we go. Got some goats front on. And some really in this position, if you had a shot on any of these goats, which one would you be taking? No matter about the actual horns as such, but if you were going for a shot just based on ethics, which would be your most ideal one?
Personally, it would kind of be 50-50 between that completely front on one and that black one in the front there.
Yeah. And
that one that's broadside. The broadside shot, you have more room to play with. I guess you have a bigger area of vitals because you're side on to those lungs.
Yeah.
You have a bigger area where you can make an ethical shot. Whereas front on, I believe front on shots are
so brutal,
very effective.
Yeah.
But you have less room to play in the left-right situation as well as height. So you got to be. I only take front on shots close. Like
definitely
for me, 15 and under, like a 20-meter front on shot is getting out there for a front on shot because that animal, if they're front on, 9 times out of 10 they're looking at you, they're alert, and they will move pretty quick.
Yeah. Say we're taking a shot at that one front on. Essentially, it's pretty much where that shadow point hits, right? You've got the shadow point.
Yep.
Range.
Yep, but just going off his back legs, he's slightly turned, like he's not dead on, so you'd be slightly to the left of center.
Yeah, so about there-ish.
Yep, that'd be perfect right there.
Get another little X happening. And then, what have I done here? Let's steal this X back. I'm going to put him in and around here for you.
Yep, that's pretty well it. Could be back slightly, tiniest bit, but yeah, where that is now, or back an inch from that, that is like top of the heart. That animal will be down in a matter of seconds and will not go far at all.
Big Billy Goat Gruff looking at us. He's an interesting one because we actually don't have view of his legs, but I'd say one leg's here, one leg's here. Essentially, he's pretty much covering his whole vitals in a sense.
Yeah, pretty well. He's kind of at that angle where if you go through sort of the front of his chest, you're probably missing across the front of the heart. And then
if you go through his leg,
body is turned enough that you could go just behind that scapula.
Just in back here slightly, but down a little bit.
Yeah, so I'd go back. That would still collect his scapula there, I believe. So about there.
Yeah, okay.
And about halfway up the body. If you're aiming for a lung shot, you kind of want to be halfway up.
So you actually move it up a little bit higher here. More like there-ish.
Yeah. You'd hopefully just slip that arrow in behind the scapula, and then the angle of the exit for that would still collect the middle or back half of that offside lung.
Moving on to the foxes. This is one of the animals I'm most excited to try hunt this year. Fox.
Do you get many foxes up your way?
Dude, I actually saw my very first fox ever on the block that I've been going to for almost 5 years now. I saw one not the other day.
No way.
Yeah, so I haven't targeted him yet, but I will definitely try to go back for him because he actually showed up on a camera. We put a pig trap up and he showed up on the camera in that. Cool. So I'm intrigued to go back and get him, but I'm planning on coming down south. So hopefully I can target one down there as well. Would be sick. For someone like this, you've actually got, so he's walking right now. It's a moving shot. In regards to something like a smaller animal, at what point do you almost disregard the bone structure? Like, is there a point for you where you're like, okay, it's a rabbit, it's fine?
Yeah, apart from the skull. So if you whistle a fox in or call a fox in, they're coming in front on, I would not recommend with a bow and a broad head shooting them between the eyes. Because the tip of that broadhead would generally hit the bridge of that, because it's not a flat, they're not impacting a flat surface. It'll hit and run along that bone and kind of like deflect, I guess. I've seen it in the past I wouldn't recommend going for a headshot on any animal with a bow and arrow. Because normally if that's the case, you'll hit center of the bridge of the nose and that broadhead will deflect and then go through the eye socket and won't be center of the body, and like you probably still will get them and kill them, but
it's a risky one, right?
It's a very risky one. I've seen in the past headshots on a fox and that fox runs off and
oh my god,
finds a hole somewhere, and
that's a nightmare.
I wouldn't recommend that. But as for the body and their bones and stuff, if you're shooting a bow that's upward of 60 pound, even 50 pound, I believe would probably be enough that you could take a quartering on shot, like we got here with this fox. You would aim right for where you know that heart sits. Yeah. And I would not worry about penetration. They're a very soft skinned animal. And the bone that you do hit, most solid broadheads, like if you use like an expandable or something, you may run into an issue, but then again, they've got such a big cutting blade on them that you'll be doing a lot of damage.
Yeah, definitely.
So that one there for slightly quartering on shots like that, you kind of want to aim for the offside elbow. So I'd probably move that back the tiniest bit.
Yeah, and down a smidge.
Yeah, not too long. Foxes. Because foxes are such a small animal, like you can pretty well. Yeah. Yep. That's where I'd put it. Just below half.
Yeah.
So then you don't risk hitting too low or you're just going at the bottom of it. And foxes, especially when you're calling them in, a lot of times you'll get the shot you will get is really close.
Mm-hmm.
And most people that are shooting 70, 80 pound, their top pin's normally like a 20-meter pin.
Yeah.
And when you get to that close of a distance, the arrow doesn't have enough time to reach the arc or that arrow flight height of your sight fairly well. So if you're 5 meters and under, you kind of got to take into account that that arrow is coming out of the bow below your sight, and you will hit below where your pin is sitting.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Front on shot.
Nice looking fox.
It is beautiful, right? This is front on shot, one sitting down.
Yep. Right between his front legs.
Pretty much. Oh,
yep. Yeah, I'll put it right there.
Yeah.
I'll put it right there because he's sitting.
It's going to curve it all around.
Yeah, that's going to be coming out, sort of out through his lungs, through the top of his back because of the angle of his back.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't want to go too high because then you'd risk sort of just going through the neck, which you probably would still collect the jugular and stuff. But yeah, where you've got that X right there, in between his legs, that would be a perfect hard shot.
Little guy running on in. Not actually, he's paused, but similar sort of shot, right? He's pretty much front on.
You pulled him up it.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, you called him in, you pulled him up. He's looking for where the feed is.
Given that he is actually standing in this position, you'd go slightly higher than what we've done on the other, right?
Like, I would go slightly higher.
Even higher. Yeah.
You're probably going to be shooting slightly down on him as well.
Oh, yeah, true.
You're standing in front of a tree, whistling. So, yeah, you just want to make sure you get it under that chin for most of those front-on shots if you're slightly shooting down on them.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, where you got that there was pretty good.
Yeah. I think this is one of the last of our foxes. Not a lie.
Oh, got another one.
We've got another. So given that he's coming in, he's quartering on, so you want to get in front of this shoulder. And if you're aiming for the back of his elbow, if you want to aim for that, is that what you're saying essentially? Whenever you're shooting?
Yep. So the more that they turn front on, the further it'll be back.
Okay.
So yeah, since he's turned more forward and you got a fair gap between his front legs, you want to sort of aim for the front point of his shoulder on the onside.
There.
Yeah.
A bit more. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Right there, just to the left of his cheek there. So that will come through and that will exit probably halfway down his body on his offside, halfway back down through the ridge. That'll collect the heart end. Yeah. And the lung as that's exiting there.
Here we go. Last fox, then we got some cats. Have you shot many cats?
I've shot a few. Haven't shot one in a lot of years. But yeah, when I was younger, growing up, out west there and stuff, yeah, I've shot my fair share of cats. We've actually got a few on our place at the moment that show up on cameras like once in a blue moon. There's a tabby one and a black one, and they've been living there for quite a while. And I'm assuming they will be breeding up. So I'll be surprised if I can't get a drop on a feral cat here soon.
Pretty interesting. You hear about how many there are in the wild. Like I think there's more wild cats than there are foxes.
Yeah,
but yet you don't see them anywhere near as much. I mean, obviously, place dependent. I've definitely got cats on my block. Never seen them. I've heard them of the night time. They come into the house block and they try to get the farm cats going. But I've never actually seen one out in the wild.
Yeah, and they're hard to call in. Like foxes, you can call them in, and they're kind of a run their prey down type of animal. Like they hear like you're whistling, or they hear like a rabbit or a bird or something that's injured. They're running in and grabbing that thing before any other fox in that area can grab it. And whereas cats, like leopards, tigers, they stalk their prey, and they sort of slink through the grass. They sort of sneak around and will pounce on it when they're close. So yeah, it's really hard to see them. I have in the past whistled in cats.
Yep.
They'll pop their head up and you won't see them coming and be like, oh, he's right there. Like, they'll just sneak in on you when you're not expecting it.
Yeah, wow. I've heard that the whistles will only work in particular if there's like a lot of rabbits around as well, like your field ones.
Yeah, so your different calls will vary. So we don't really have many rabbits on our place, but we have a lot of hares. And their calls are a lot different. So yeah, we use it like a hare caller. which is more like a squawking
Yeah.
type of sound. Could play off as like an injured cockatoo or something like that as well. So that's sort of the call that's most effective for our area.
Yeah. So this guy, he's pretty much broadside, but he's got his front foot back, so he's blocking his vitals once again. He'd once again almost go for that elbow on the opposite side.
Yeah, I would use that V between his legs, go straight up from that.
Yeah, okay.
And then it right there, or anywhere from there to an inch or two further back.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you're collecting those lungs. Yeah, kind of want to keep it just below that halfway up the body there.
Yeah. Cat, she's actually not giving us a shot at all.
No, that's head's completely covering the chest.
Yeah. This is like a typical broadside perch cat that's almost in that position. I'd almost say like that's a very typical position you'd see a cat in, right? Almost if it's aware, ready to take off. But once again, you're almost saying with this style animal, this smaller animal, you're good just to be able to take a shot, right? In poundage dependent, but yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So you can go there. He has got his elbow tucked a little like back a fair way down his body, as you can see. So his heart will still be sitting forward in his chest. So yeah, where you had it there was pretty well right. You can kind of see the dip in his back. Where his scapula would be sort of coming up as he's hunched up on his spine like that. So you sort of go from, that dip in his back there, which is pretty much the perfect line that you've got.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Interesting. This one's a hard quartering away shot. Like almost to the extent that you pretty much don't have a shot, right?
Yeah. Unless the only
shot
you really have there would be like a Texas heart shot.
I was going to say, taking the whole thing.
Not recommend taking.
No. This one's a bit of a better one in regards to quartering away.
Yep.
But given that the front foot is so far forward, you've almost got, so you think about with a regular quartering away shot, you want to go back, but given that the front foot's so far forward, you can see like the heart and everything's going to be in this sort of position, right?
Yeah. So I'd come up from the back of that onside leg.
Yeah.
As line, you can kind of see his crease there. Yep.
Yeah. In through there somewhere.
Yeah, because his chest is turned around. So you'd have a little bit of room to play because angling away, you've got a lot of vitals to collect and a lot of organs and stuff that you're going through on a quartering shot. So, yeah, where you have it there is probably the furthest forward I would go. And then you have a bit of come back
there more.
Yeah, I would put that. That's where I would probably put my pin.
Yeah. We got a red stag, a ridiculous red stag, and he's laying down. Would you take a shot on a laying stag in this sort of situation?
No. Red stags, they have their bone. If you hit bone,
even with going anywhere.
Yeah, even like with an 80+ pound setup, 530 to 600 grain arrow, if you hit major bone, you will get peno, but not enough to get through to that other side. So that one, I probably just wouldn't. You probably could slip it where you put, like in front, and
hope for the best.
Go for a quartering on through.
I mean, because he's actually tucked down the way, you'd actually want to go a little bit lower, even I reckon.
Yeah, you'd want to go low. Yeah, but you do run a very high risk of breaking that leg bone.
Very hard shot if you're going to do it. Here we go. Red stag, pretty much standing. He's slightly quartering on. But once again, you'd go slightly in front of the shoulder, but pin it to that front side shoulder a bit more, right?
Yeah, just because he's angled there.
Yeah, even potentially a little bit lower, where you got your hairline.
You can kind of see that color line. So where where the mane of his neck comes down to a V, which is a couple inches above where you've got that there.
Yeah,
that's kind of the limit for your height. If you go any further above that, you're kind of just through the neck. Like you might be lucky to collect the major arteries and jugular and stuff, but thinking of where that arrow is going through and going to be exiting and what vitals it's collecting on the way, the height that you've got that there is pretty well perfect. Yeah.
Roaring stag, pretty much quartering on. I mean, once again, that's a pretty darn tough shot to take.
Yeah, so you can kind of even see there, like where you've got that cursor right there is where you would want to hit, but that would be the front point of his shoulder, and that would be a dense bone joint, so you wouldn't risk it on that one.
No, this is a good one. little hind, red hind. She's slightly coring away, but pretty much broadside. You can, and this is really cool. Like in an animal like this, they pretty much show you the V, right? With like the armpit sort of hole and everything you've got there. You've got your muscle structure in this position. So it's a pretty blurry photo, but it does give a lot of, like, you can pretty much say like in this point in here.
Yeah, so that'd be the front of the triangle. So that's a pretty good shot. Angle.
Given that she's slightly angled though, you'd want to go back a bit, right?
Yeah, so I'd go straight up from that offside leg as my line.
Okay, so even further back.
Yeah, probably right there. Yep, because he's slightly angled. This is a very good angle for people that are new to bow hunting, because it opens up
so much
that onside a lot, and that's probably the biggest kill zone you would have on an angle.
Definitely. You got a big old red stag, and he's sitting. Oh, that's a slightly interesting shot, isn't it? Because he's broadside with his legs stacked, but then he's got his tail tucked back and around him a little bit.
Yeah, so I'd just look at the front half of his body there. The fact that his two legs are silhouetted behind each other would pretty much put his chest cavity completely broadside to you. So for that shot, I would, exactly that line. So the back half of his front leg, go straight up from that, which is the exact line you've got, and then I'd drop it down slightly. So you're going to want a third or just below a third.
Just go even lower than that? Because I kind of think about the elbow joint. Like
his elbow would be down, slightly down.
It's actually probably more like there, isn't it? The elbow joint.
Yeah. So that height you've got there is perfect, top of the heart. Like if you hit him there, he's going nowhere. Gives you a bit of room to play for height as well.
So slightly, he's pretty much broadside, but he's got one leg. He's walking, which makes it hard for the shot position. He's actually pretty much, he's framing that whole front leg is almost framing his whole vital system. If you look at that, you could still get definitely lung shot him.
You're circling there. Yep, that would be his triangle. So that shot, he is slightly quartering on. The way he's got his body turned, I would go use
back a little bit.
The front of his onside leg there. Go to the front side of that leg and straight up.
More like up in here somewhere.
Yeah, sort of the front half of that triangle is where you'd want to try and get that arrow in there.
Kind of in there a bit more, maybe a little lower.
Yeah, a bit lower, below that half, and then and then you got a bit of room to play. Like if you hit an inch further forward, you'd probably still be behind that bone. Yeah,
it's pretty fascinating, isn't it? Like just how much of that slight angle can make such a difference.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's really hard. You got to like kind of make sure on the angle and get a good idea of how that animal has its body situated when you are going to make a shot and pick your point.
What do you reckon about that? Go.
Yep, that would, that's pretty well top of the heart. Like using, you can see that V between his front legs, pretty much straight up from that V, sort of essentially in the crease in that pocket. He's opening that up. And low air poundage bow. That's a really good shot because you're getting peno very easily, especially on like boars and stuff like that. You're in that crease. There's kind of forward of that crease, like over the triangle and up over the lungs, their fighting pad gets pretty thick and dense. So if you can slip it in their pocket at a slightly quartering away, you're not really hitting any major fighting pad or anything. So you'll find a lot easier to get good penetration.
100. So you got a broadside stag, but he's walking, so he's marching. He's got his front foot forward. Now, this is actually an interesting question that I had. You'd actually sent me a video of a pig, and you'd shot it on the move. And obviously, it's something you were pretty aware of. And you had told me you were pretty much aiming a foot in front of him, and you end up hitting pretty much in like the direct pocket where you were meant to. Like it was an incredible shot for the place.
Yeah, so he was half on the trot. He was getting out of there. I just kind of knew
definitely following
the speed of the bow. You have to put a bit more lead on than what you would expect. And if anyone's ever shot rifles a lot, even at like a close range. You don't have to put much because the speed of a bullet is
So
like
good.
exponential compared to an arrow.
Definitely.
But even on like a moving or a running shot with a rifle at a little bit of a distance, you got to like put a foot or two like lead on them most times to hit him in the shoulder. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend taking moving shots on animals.
Definitely not. No. I mean, I was going to say, you're pretty darn experienced, right? You've been bow hunting your whole life. I think you told me you've done, as a number, like well over, did you say over 700 animals you reckon you've taken? Probably.
Yeah, they'd be getting up there.
Yeah,
it's a lot. It's probably even more than that. Now, and that's just all with the bow. So
with the bow, yeah. So I mean, you've definitely got a lot of years on a lot of us.
yeah, and even then, I still find myself in situations where I will tell myself, "No, I have no shot," and I know my capabilities, and
I think that's something
that I use.
So I was going to say that's something that everyone needs to be able to figure out for themselves, right? Like you need to know your limitations. You need to have your comfortable boundaries that you're going to stick within when you're bow hunting.
Yeah. Yeah, so where you've got that there is pretty well perfect. You can kind of, because you've got his leg tucked forward, you can see that elbow, the back of his elbow there, kind of highlighted a bit. Yep, so that's pretty much the back of his elbow. So you kind of want to just hit the offside leg, I guess, essentially. Use that for your line. And then, about that third. Yeah, so anyway, from where you had it, sort of from the back of that leg even, just above his elbow, from there through to where you have it, in that whole triangle area on that broad side.
Yeah.
You want to be in that zone there.
Your front on stag. Well aware of you. He's 14 meters just to be within your shot.
Yep.
But we've got some brush, and he's actually, so if you look at where his body position is, he's not completely front on. He's kind of tucking off to the back. He's almost quartering on in a sense.
Yeah.
You'd actually want to bring it right over into this side.
Yeah, you want to be slightly, because you kind of want to envision that. It's kind of hard with animals because they're a 3D object that is not transparent. So you kind of want to imagine that there's a heart or an orange or tennis ball or whatever you want to imagine sits central to the width of their body.
Yeah.
And it sits pretty well in between their front legs, down the bottom of their chest.
Yeah.
So no matter the angle that you turn this animal at, you should essentially have a fair idea of being able to envision where that heart's sitting within that animal. For people starting out, I would definitely recommend analyzing the animal, and if it's like a spotted pig or a coloured goat, using a tuft of hair or a spot or a mark as your reference to aim for once you've got that angle identified, just for ease of knowing where to aim. But I'm to the point where I don't really pay attention to those sorts of things when I'm aiming, because I've got such a good idea, and I've dissected and butchered up enough animals that I've shot in the past and analysed my own shots that I've taken. Knowing where that heart sits and where those vitals are, I can just sort of take that animal's body as a whole and envision where that heart's sitting, and then make a call on what bone structure's in the way from there as to whether I'd take that shot.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just knowing the anatomy is so important, right?
Yeah, and especially people that are new getting into it. If you shoot an animal, you make a good shot. In the process of when you're taking meat for that animal, or if it's like a rank old pig or a fox or something like that, even just taking the time to get an idea of that bone structure. Brad Smith's really good for doing this. I know they go through shot placement up there at Croacking Adventures extensively, and they take time to, when an animal's been taken, show that and use it as a learning opportunity. And in years past, like me growing up, going through it, like every now and again, like even just as a refresh, I'd make a shot on an animal, and that animal would go down in like 10 meters type of thing. And I'd be like, I'll whip his shoulder off, open up that rib cage, see where my arrow went, exactly what it hit, knowing the angle and where those vitals are sitting, just to really have a good understanding of all that.
Definitely. Yeah, I think it's definitely a valuable lesson, right? Like if they're making sure they're doing it every single time up at Croacking Adventures, it's for a big reason. It's definitely going to work. I mean, this front on shot in regards to where he is, you actually can't see his legs. You can't kind of see where the V kind of ends within his hair, but you can actually see, like, it's almost like down here, right? Like his V point. So his chest, like the bottom of his chest, is probably going to almost be down underneath the picture here. Actually, you can
Yeah,
see
it would
how low it
definitely be
is.
down
It'd be
underneath that chin shot.
down in there almost. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
really,
if
you
that
got,
was a clear shot and there wasn't like a bit of brush or something in front of him,
yeah,
it would be down below the V of that mane. And then with him slightly quartering, it would be slightly
just
off
slightly
center,
to
so
the
it
side.
angles through.
Yeah. So almost
Yeah.
down here.
So that'd be your line, and then you'd probably want to, probably go
Go a
down
little
on
bit
the edge of the
lower.
picture type thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is one of our last stags that we've got, and we've got a few other animals that we go into. We get into the piggies next. So he's pretty much straight broadside, right? Like
Yep.
a little bit of a, but once again, so I liked what you said before we even started. Like if you think about your front leg, you pin
Yep.
it completely in half and go all the way up and then just above your elbow joint, and that's going to be a pretty decent position.
So you use that for your line, and then make sure you're below that half,
Below
so
that
about
half.
the third
Yeah.
of the body.
Yeah.
That's in the middle of the triangle. A lot of people would just put that on the crease. So if you go back an inch or two on that animal's body, yeah, that would still be an excellent kill shot. Like that's back of the heart and lungs. If you go too far behind that crease into the sort of that lighter section and shade,
Yeah.
even there, you'd probably still hit the bottom of the lungs. Below that, you'd sort of be behind the heart, and then you move into gut and stuff. So that's probably the limit for the height and back. Any further back or below that, you wouldn't want to go there. But yeah, essentially from that entire triangle from the front point of his shoulder, yeah. So anywhere from where you've got that, between those two, I would say that back one is sort of on your back limit. You want to sort of be in front of that on that crease, or slightly forward where you've got that other point there.
Definitely. Moving on to some pigs. And this one's quartering on. And the hard thing with pigs and quartering on shots in particular, or frontal shots in general, is that they've got no neck, right? Like it's pretty much head body. It makes it tough.
So the angle that he's at here, this shot, I've actually taken this shot on a hell of a lot of good boars in the past. As long as you're clearing that cheekbone or that chin, a lot of times I've taken this shot, I've been crouched down in long grass and the boar's picked up a bit of movement, and especially if they're rutting, they'll see that, and if you're low to the ground, they'll come over and kind of suss you out and see what you are. So they'll be coming towards you, and they'll normally have their head down, and then they'll lift it up to try and get a better look, and they'll be dropping their head sort of up and down. And if you can get under that chin when their head is up, down sort of the side of their cheek there, right where you've got that, that's basically the reverse of the perfect quartering away shot. So that'll exit a few ribs back behind the crease on the other side. That's taking out the top of the heart and lungs.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, if you're standing, so you think about pig, if you're standing on this shot, you're actually going to need to come up higher for your shot, because if you're standing and you're well above
if you're shooting down on him,
and out,
if you're shooting slightly down on him, you want to kind of go halves.
Yeah,
kind of need to be able to envision where the exit of that will be, and
definitely
you don't want it to be too low.
No. What's this? He's almost got like his it almost looks like a computer speaker out in the wild on a game camera. That's hilarious. It's interesting. So another pig, he's quartering away. He's got his his front leg is back, so he's kind of covering his vitals with that. But if you were to go off your rule, once again, you'd almost punch it in here, right?
Yep. So that would be as forward as you'd want to go, and then because of the angle that he is at, you can come back. Yeah, sort of use the back of that front leg.
As your reference.
Yeah, and that's like perfect. That's pretty good height there. With quartering away shots, I've found over the years, you're better off being slightly further back than too far forward, because if they're quartering away and you're too far forward, you'll collect the onside lung, but it will exit sort of forward in front of that offside lung. So you better, if you're slightly further back on a quartering away shot, it will be better because you'll collect a lot more vitals and organs through their body.
Yeah, okay. All right. We'll go with this one at the back. Oh, what did I just do? Not what I wanted to, that's for sure.
This one here with his mud being on him, a pretty good reference for like height. You want to kind of be on that mud line. If you imagine them, there's a little bit for his crease there where there's no bud, but yeah. So that's pretty well. He's practically broadside, maybe
Yeah.
slightly quartering on, but his front legs are split, so he's creating that V. So you want to use the
The
top of that
middle of the
V as
V.
your line.
So
Yep,
nah.
yep. And yeah, that's pretty good for height. Just below that sort of halfway point. He's pretty small pig, so
Yeah. I actually want to move this photo along because that would be a good one to take a shot on as well, right?
yeah, yep. Perfectly broadside. You can see being a bit thin in hair, you can really see that crease.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, you kind of want to be
It also
right
goes
on that.
front foot slightly forward again, so you can almost go that V almost.
Yeah,
In.
yeah.
Would that be too
Slightly.
far in, you reckon?
That's not too far forward. Like the front, that still would be hard in a lot of vitals.
Yep.
But I probably wouldn't go any further forward.
Forward, no, definitely. So from
So
there
that's
back
still
to about
back to about there.
about
So
there.
kind of that's a really good shot there. I'd probably move it forward like the tiniest little bit, and that would be my ultimate perfect. Yeah, that's top of the heart.
Yeah.
Guaranteed for that one there.
That's incredible. Once again, if you're just listening, you can definitely jump across the YouTube channel because it's going to be up there. So it would make this a lot better viewing. It's good fun for us, that's for sure. Hopefully we're explaining enough. If you are just listening, you can kind of get your grasp around it. So we've got a mob of pigs. We've got one who's pretty much he's kind of front. He's quartering on, and we've got one that's broadside to us, and one that's hidden. Like the other two are hidden behind those ones, pretty much. So say that this is your big boar that you're going for, and like you said, he's almost looking up at you. If you can clear that chin, which I don't think you've actually got a shot on here.
So I would be So if you go slightly lower and then to the left, a whisker
in like there,
right there. Yep, that would be my shot on that pig. If you can slip it down under there, you can. But this shot is risky. And once again, like I'm talking close range, like 10 meters and under.
Definitely.
Arrow will get there quicker than they can make any substantial movements. So you'll be getting that in there pretty quick. So that would be the only kill shot on that for that angle with a bow. But
I'm actually so surprised with how quick a pig will move, especially like if they're aware. They duck that string so quickly.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize it. A lot of their movement, because they don't have really long legs to be able to drop on or spring on. So pigs, a lot of their movement will be more of like a turning or rolling sort of situation.
Yeah. Drop and roll.
So yeah, that broadside pig right there, you can kind of see like a bit of a V created by his legs there, and you can see his crease. I would normally recommend being just in front of the crease.
Okay, so back just a slight smidge.
Yep. So right there, on the crease is still a good shot for broadside, but you just risk getting close to being too far back and missing those important parts.
So I'm going to hurry us along. Unfortunately, we've got about 8 minutes left. So I think we're at 30 of what have we got? 50. Shit. I'm running out of time here. Let's jump straight to. So we've done a fair few pigs. This is a good one.
Yeah, that's quartering on enough that you can get that in front of the point of that shoulder, and you pretty much don't have anything there. Like that's going through the neck, and that's fairly well open to the chest cavity from that angle.
Up a bit.
So I go slightly up because his neck's down. I go slightly up, and then back to the left a whisker. But that's you want to angle through, pretty much come out. So that would essentially come out. Just on the crease or behind it on that offside there.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to scroll through a few pigs here.
Yep.
Here we go. We're going to some chittle.
That's a pretty good one there. You can kind of see where his elbow is. If you use that bottom line, those white dots. So that's pretty well his elbow. You want to be, because he's kind of turned slightly, you kind of want to use that elbow as your line. And then you want to be just above that elbow. And Chittle being a very switched on, high reflex type of deer, you want to be a quarter. I would recommend aiming a quarter. You just want to clear that elbow for where you're aiming. So that then if that animal reacts, you have a good foot and a half, and then to drop, and you'll still collect the lungs. But if he does not move, you're above that elbow in the heart.
Yeah. Would you take it?
I personally wouldn't. No, he's
No,
pretty
I
big.
wouldn't.
I wouldn't risk a shot like that.
Exactly. If you had to,
If you had to, I mean, I believe that
even
my setup
lower,
of my
right?
bow, I would get the penetration if I hit the front point of that shoulder. And I've taken this shot on fallow where I had literally just aimed for the dense bone of the point of that shoulder, cracked them right on it, and I've still got a pass through and an exit wound. But yeah, that heart is sitting where that
given that he's
where that cross
going to
is
drop
right there. It's kind of it's slightly to the right.
Yeah.
But it's guaranteed bone on that shot. So, yeah, I definitely wouldn't take that shot.
Sitting deer. No shot there. Not really, right?
Not really. Like, he's quartering a bit and you could get it down his neck. But when animals are laying down, even pigs, when they're bedded as well, if they're sort of in a prone position, so not, I'm not saying like laying on their side and stuff like that. If they're in a prone position or sitting, laying upright like that, you've got to get pretty well to that ground line. Like that ground line is basically, it sort of pushes up all their vitals, and the bottom of their chest is sitting on that dirt. So when you're talking about your height of a third the way up, it's pretty low.
Yeah, it's literally going to be right in there. Right.
Like, yeah.
That's crazy.
Essentially, yeah. It's pretty low.
A prominent Adam's apple on this one and a brush like penile sheath. This is a fellow buck.
Yeah.
He's slightly quartering away, but pretty much completely broadside.
Yeah, so that really exposes that pocket and that soft spot in behind the elbow there. So yeah, right where you've got that, and then you've probably got an inch behind that to play with. But yeah, you want to stay below. You can kind of see that line.
What would be the highest shot you reckon would be all right on this guy?
Yeah, halfway up, but that's assuming that he won't move at all.
Definitely,
yeah. So you want to be below that bit of a line that you can see in the color.
I was going to say, he's pretty much got a perfect little line for you to be able to
so you want to be below that, sort of in that real light part of the pocket.
Yeah.
I go slightly down and essentially in that real highlighted spot right there. Yeah. That would be a perfect heart shot for that animal at that angle.
It's beautiful. Shit or stag, but unfortunately, position-wise, that's really, you're going to have to wait for him to take a step or two.
Yeah, he's turned enough that majority of his bone structure there is covering all his vitals. So
that's just a cartoon. We won't use that one. This is an interesting shot. Would you take it, or you'd wait for it?
Yeah, with deer, unless you've like a red stag or a fallow buck, when you're pulling them in and they're kind of preoccupied or they're on the move coming in towards you and you pull them up, they're kind of not really waiting. But when a deer's just feeding and they stand up, head raised in a quartering on position, I wouldn't recommend, like I personally probably wouldn't take that shot. And especially for that angle, there's a lot of bone structure in the way there.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a fair sign to say, like, in general, don't take that shot then. Like, if you wouldn't take it, then I think no one should really be taking it, right? Like, I've literally seen your bow, like, slip through ridiculous sized pigs like butter, like melted butter, just like straight through. So if you're not willing to take a shot like that, like, I don't think anyone should be.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like, with all these shot, like, placements that we are putting on these, like, if you're not sure, I know not getting a shot away, and you kind of, in times like situations like that, if you don't take a somewhat possible risky shot and that animal wins you, sees you, gets away, runs off or whatever, and you don't have that shot, trust me, and like a lot of other bow hunters will tell you, they would rather have not taken a risky 100%. Shot and that animal get away and live, and you have the potential to find him later down the track and get a good shot on him, rather than wounding that animal and hitting them bad and not knowing whether the animal's going to die or how long it's going to take, or not seeing him again.
Feeling.
It is the worst feeling.
It will daunt you. It will haunt you for months.
Yeah. So unless you're sure and you're confident, and for most people, especially new people getting into it, I would limit yourself to broadside and
definitely
quartering away shots up to that sort of 45-degree quartering.
in most situations, if they don't know you're there and you're hanging out with them, eventually they're going to give you a shot. You just sit and wait, and you'll get a shot.
Yeah,
Just
you
be
just gotta
patient.
wait. Yeah,
Yeah.
you gotta be patient. You gotta be disciplined. Know your limits, and yeah, there's a lot of factors that go into bow hunting and make it sort of what it is and how challenging. Like it's a game of inches or even millimeters at some points. So
yeah. So we've got
yeah,
some fallow bucks quartering away. Would that be too far forward?
No,
That would be good.
halfway between that gap in their front legs.
Yeah, which is
I wouldn't go any further forward.
Yeah,
because you're quartering, you kind of got from there all the way back to the back of where that line kind of makes a bit of like a triangle. Yep. So there, you kind of got, you can see pretty much in line with that off leg. So I would probably use that off leg as my line, or the front of that off leg, because you're kind of trying to angle through to the point of the offside shoulder to get that heart as it goes through. Oops, yeah, so those two crosses there. So my ultimate perfect shot would be that height right between those two crosses to the front of that offside leg would be the perfect height.
More in line.
Yeah. So that's where I'd go for that one.
Yeah.
So that would be 100%. That's collecting the heart on the way through.
That's incredible. All right, we're going to do this one as our last one because we're out of time, unfortunately. Our little fawn shot, we didn't want to do this one, but it was the only hard quartering away shot that I could kind of actually find in my quick search that I was doing before this. So, I mean, even that as a shot is not ideal. Look at that.
Yeah, so that is a shot where the only risky part about this shot is you have a narrow window of left and right for this shot. Yeah. So you want to you just want to clear that back hip bone that you can see there. You kind of want to essentially hit that offside shoulder or the front of that offside shoulder. So pretty well where you've got that cross there. Maybe it's slightly back. Because you always want to be on quartering away, you want to be slightly further back than too far forward.
So you're aiming for this point on the back shoulder? Is that
offside shoulder, yeah. Because he's turned.
Anywhere within that, though, or are you just wanting...
Okay, so see that split between his front legs? Come straight up from that.
Yeah.
You don't want to be in front of that. Yeah. Because if you go in front of that V, you're sort of kind of potentially going in front of the heart, and that's exiting out the chest.
Yeah.
I guess. So you kind of want to hit where that cross is right there would be hitting the point of that offside shoulder, like the front of that offside leg at that height.
Yeah.
So you pretty much got from there and then back without hitting that hip.
Yeah.
Really? Which is a very effective shot because that's going through a lot of the body when you think about it. The only risky thing about shots that are that hard quartering is your narrow window for line. You don't have much play left or right. And then also on bigger animals, like I think I mentioned that big 45.5-inch billy that I shot last year. He was a quartering, or the first shot was hard quartering away, pretty much exactly like this. But if you just flip it and he was facing the other way.
Yeah, wow.
The broadhead, so I hit him with the 3-blade, and that broadhead actually hit right there where we're talking. So my line was perfect. I aimed in the right spot. The shot was really close, like 7 or 8 meters. And it actually hit the outside of the rib cage. And because of the angle was so steep on those ribs, it ran down the outside of the rib cage and then buried once it sort of hit that pocket behind the elbow. And that's where it buried sort of in the front of his chest.
Yeah.
And there was a cut, probably 8-inch gash where that broadhead actually run down the outside, just because it was such a steep angle. So in some cases that can potentially happen on those really steep quartering away like that. But like that billy, I quickly got a second shot into him, but that first shot did bury into his chest cavity and collect a lot of vitals. But yeah, they're kind of the risks you run from a shot angle like that.
Definitely. Well, dude, I'm going to have to cut it there. Unfortunately, I got to jump upstairs real quick and look after my daughter. But I think that was incredibly insightful. And if you guys didn't get to watch, make sure you jump on and watch the YouTube channel because even some of the positions I was putting in and thinking that would be a good shot, like just to get Liam's extra double check on it and say, oh, just slightly back or just slightly forward. That was actually super insightful, bro. So thank you. Once again,
no
Liam
worries.
_ Bowhunter. That was
Yeah, that's
sick,
it.
dude.
So if anyone's got any questions, like if I don't reply, I'm either at work or busy, but I do get back to even like messages sitting in my requests. Like I try to get onto all of them. And yeah, always keen to help people out and help people become sort of better bow hunters, because it's not easy. It is challenging tasks, but we're all very passionate about it. And yeah, so if anyone wants any tips, any feedback, anything like that, yeah, happy to help anyone out or have a chat or conversation to anyone. So
appreciate you, bro. You're a good gem for our bow hunting community. That's for sure.
thanks, man. I really appreciate it.